Chapter 1518. From the perspective of selecting candidates, Ma Junxiao was definitely not an outstanding candidate. In terms of overall ability, he might not even be as competitive as Jin Fugue, let alone someone like Shi Long. However, Death, the oldest and wisest of the four horsemen, still chose to place his bet on him. There must be a deeper meaning behind this. Even Ma Junxiao himself did not know that he was born with an extraordinary talent, or rather, a superpower. This ability allowed him to reach a level that ordinary people could not reach when he was performing neural connection. It allowed him to break through the limitations imposed by some programmers. To put it simply, he did not need any training to reach a certain level of transcendence. At this point, someone would definitely ask, if he had never played a neural connection game in his life, or if he was born in an era where such games did not exist, wouldn't this ability be useless? That's right. That's it. People's understanding of superpowers, supernatural abilities, and psychic abilities was basically obtained from literature, anime, and movies. Therefore, people generally believed that the so-called superpowers were powerful and cool abilities such as telekinesis, fire-breathing, super-physical strength, flying in the sky and burrowing under the ground, and foreseeing the future. However, this understanding was obviously very one-sided. Based on the scale of the planet Earth and the current scale of human society, even if there were people with superpowers like those mentioned above, they were definitely very rare. Otherwise, the world would have been destroyed a long time ago. If there were superpowers in this world, most of them would be the ability to quickly master any musical instrument, the ability to never tremble when performing precise operations, the ability to never fall down when walking downstairs, or the ability to stand on one leg and bark like a dog to increase metabolism. They were not that powerful, cool, or even strange abilities that were hard to detect. In reality, perhaps there were people with superpowers among those reading this, but they did not know about it. This was also a very normal phenomenon. For example, if a person with the ability to quickly master any musical instrument happened to be a farmer who was born at the end of the Eastern Han Dynasty, and he had never seen any musical instrument in his life, it was naturally impossible for him to discover that he had a supernatural ability related to it. And if the ability to never tremble when performing precise operations was possessed by a rich and powerful official of the Elizabethan era, it was obvious that this brother of his, who even needed servants to wait on him when he woke up in the morning and put on his clothes, obviously couldn't become a surgeon, right? As for the ability to never fall when going down the stairs, or jump on one leg and bark like a dog to increase metabolism, these were abilities that one wouldn't know if he didn't try, and if he didn't know, he wouldn't even try. To put it more bluntly, if a person who could catch a blade with his bare hands had never been slashed head-on in his life, his ability was as good as useless. Of course, Ma Junxiao's superpower had been put to good use. It was this innate power that had created the character Phantom Dawn. Even though Phantom Dawn was horrible as a candidate, his superpower gave him a great advantage in this new candidate game designed by Woody. That was the intention of Death. He did not want a qualified candidate, but a person who was most suitable to the rules of the game. He wanted to use Phantom Dawn to point out the loophole in the current game format to prove that this new game format was a failure and thus prove that Woody's idea was wrong. A candidate who was not qualified at all, just because he had the superpower to be stronger than a normal person in the game, would be able to bully other candidates who were better than him or even defeat the winner of the candidate game. If that happened, it would be a great irony. This was Death's plan, a brilliant move that was beyond the scope of a gamble. It did not matter to Death who the winner of the candidate game was. As long as his pawns could be undefeatable in a head-to-head confrontation, he would be able to shake Woody's overall plan and the results that he had already obtained. Currently, there was only one person who stood in his way, Feng Bujue. As the winner of this new candidate game, designed by Woody, As long as Brother Jew defeated Phantom Dawn, it would be the best proof that the game was correct. Even death would have nothing to say. However, regarding that, the current Feng Bujue did not know, since he had lost contact with Woody. No one came to inform him of this information. Michael, who had been in contact with him, even if he had noticed Death's plan, he would not share it with Brother Jew. First, he had no obligation and no interest to help a demon like Woody. Second, even if he agreed with Woody's idea and wanted to help, he would have to think twice before offending the Four Horsemen. Third, Feng Bujue was too cunning, and Michael was not too happy with him. Thankfully, even though he did not know the severity of the situation, Feng Bujue's desire to win was quite strong, but, other than that, he still had a playful attitude. Therefore, when Kieran was facing the air bomb from Judgment left hand, he wasn't absolutely cautious. He only used the fourth special effect of the Exodia prison set. The ceiling defense wall can be activated at any time. Consume mana to create a defensive force field. The amount of mana consumed is determined by the size and strength of the defensive force field to deal with it. In the end, he was almost killed by this ordinary air bomb. When the ceiling wall of defense collapsed, Feng Bujue changed his tactic immediately. He instantly activated Body Enhancement spell, Extreme, and retreated as fast as he could. He quickly took out the two pearls, moving like thunder and immovable mountain. As he ran away from the enemy's attack, he activated the second layer of defense. Even so, he still lost 2/3 of his body. Other than his head, neck, part of his collarbone, right shoulder, and right arm, the rest of his body was blown away by the air bomb. 1 second later, Feng Bujue used rewrite to recover his body. He landed on the ground with cold sweat on his forehead. He thought to himself, what the F***ck? I used all the mana that I accumulated from the Dragon Ball level battle, the first effect of the Exodia prison set, to activate the defensive barrier, but I failed to block it. I thought it would only happen through direct contact, but from the looks of it, even if it is an energy bullet fired by the left hand of Judgment, it will still have the property of data erasure. With that in mind, he adjusted his breathing. Phantom Dawn returned from the distance and switched from defense to offense. His energy rose, and the golden flame appeared again. When the sound of battle rose again, the two figures crossed each other again. Their attacks and defenses clashed. Their movements caused the ground to shake. Humph! That attack earlier seems to have drained your stamina quite a bit. When Phantom Dawn attacked, he said in a rather smug tone, and I thought you had unlimited stamina in this form. In the battle between these two, life points were not the focus because after they received a blow that would have been fatal to a normal person, they could use methods like negate or rewind to recover. Therefore, whoever ran out of stamina first was the key. It is not unlimited to begin with, but the pressure that you gave me, compared to the pressure that Infinite gave me back then, it is still lacking. Therefore, I did not lose much stamina in the early stages of the battle. Brother Jew replied in the middle of the battle. Of course, compared to when I was at S2, I am no longer at the same level of strength. Then, he used a rascal's lower whip kick. Phantom Dawn was prepared for this lower leg attack. He pulled back his leg and jumped to avoid it. TSK. Say what you want. I just want to know. Now that your stamina is lower than mine, what do you plan to do next? Do you even need to ask? Feng Bujue laughed. When you are at a disadvantage, you have to play harder, and then expand your disadvantage. Phantom Dawn asked. Stop wasting my time. Brother Jew retorted, and a level 10 wild ball punch flew at him. It's useless. Phantom Dawn retreated and dodged the attack. He said, of the skills that you use, which ones are fatal and which ones are strategically useful, I know them very well. Using surprise might work on other people, but on me, it will only be a waste of stamina. When he said that, he had already turned around and charged forward. He did not give Brother Ju any chance to take a breather or make a detour. "Since you can see it, let's be honest," Phantom Dawn said as he fought. "Admittedly, I don't have much stamina left, and I can't use the next left hand of judgment. But if we continue like this, you will be the first to run out of stamina." He paused for half a second before continuing. "I will not give you the chance to use Bian. If you insist on using it, you will have to use a skill like hiding in phase space to buy time and create an opening. If you do that, I will use that opening to reattach Sega San Lang's black belt. The few AVG and equipment that you are wearing did not recover with your body. I believe it is because you do not have enough stamina or ability to repair them. In other words, after I reattach the black belt, you will only be able to fight me with the 2 remaining NES accessories on your head and right hand. Even if you will not lose quickly, you will not have any advantage over me. With regards to body enhancement spell, mastery, if you want to use it, feel free to use it. I'm afraid if you use it, your body will break down before mine." At this point, Phantom Dawn laughed. Feng Bujue, initially, when you said that you wanted me to fight to my heart's content, I scoffed at that, but now I have to admit that you have done it. Honestly, I did not expect you to push me to this stage, and even have me calculate so many things during the battle. But because of this, the final victor will still be me. Phantom Dawn's confidence was well-founded. He had already helped Feng Bujue come up with several strategies. At this point in the battle, if Brother Ju wanted to turn things around, he would need to have a large increase in his basic attributes, and this kind of increase had to be something that could be sustained for a certain period of time and did not consume too much energy. Things like body enhancement spell, mastery would definitely not work. Brother Ju's God's combat aura was pointless because it would affect his speed. Blood Rakshasa would not be able to transform because his life points had not reached 0. Ultimate martial art, Shura transformation was also a self-damaging transformation. With regards to the soul advent that Brother Ju had not used in the match, the version that he could use was Su Huaishang's soul eye and not the version that had infinite life points, stamina points, and sorcery points, which was a consumable item like 8 Jingxia pill. Therefore, there was the problem of consumption. Now that he thought about it, he really did not have anything that he could rely on. At the end of this battle, it was still a battle of the most basic value in the game, stamina. Even though both parties had reached the realm of superhuman and could use 1 stamina to do something that a normal player could not do with 10 stamina points, since they were both at the same level, it was still essentially the same as a normal duel. "Ha!" Several seconds later, Feng Bujue laughed drily and replied, "Looks like you've given it some thought." At that moment, a wicked smile appeared on his face. "But haven't you missed something?" Fear, that was the most direct feeling that Phantom Dawn had at that moment. Even though he believed that Feng Bujue was bluffing, that wicked smile was still enough to make him shiver. The reaction of the audience was similar to Phantom Dawn's. Even though they had no idea what Brother Ju was referring to, they could not help but think that since it was Feng Bujue, there was an 80% chance that he had a plan. "All of you, open your eyes and watch carefully. Something amazing is about to happen." 2 seconds later, Feng Bujue also raised his voice as if he was making an announcement to the audience. When he finished, there was a xiong sound. In that very short moment, a golden flame that was stronger than the one around Gui Shao flashed across Brother Ju's body before disappearing. "What?" After that flash, Phantom Dawn's face was filled with shock, and he yelped in shock. The battle between him and Feng Bujue instantly changed from a stalemate to a situation where he was losing ground. Furthermore, Brother Ju's movements appeared to be more than smooth. "How is that possible?" Phantom Dawn roared as he retreated. "With your current stamina, how can you withstand the Super Science power? Even though we are both Super One." Feng Bujue cut him off and said directly, "There is something different about mine. Since Brother Jew had no hair on his head, and there was no burning flame around him, it was not until this point in their conversation that the audience realized that Brother Jew had also activated Super Saiyan 1. If yours is Super 1 Level 1, then mine is Super 1 Full Power, Feng Bujua said. Obviously, mine is more efficient, and the exhaustion is no different from normal. Why? As Phantom Dawn spoke, his breathing was getting erratic. You are just stealing someone else's skill. How can you perform a transformation that the original user did not? Huh! Feng Bujua dragged his voice and glared at him. Of course, that is because you are too weak. What did you say? Phantom Dawn repeated each word. Obviously, he was going crazy again. Your overly powerful innate power is like a double-edged sword. Feng Bujua did not let him finish. If I have to make an analogy, it is like a man who is 3 meters tall playing basketball. Even if he does not use any technique, he only needs to raise his hands, and no one will be able to block his shot. Therefore, there is no need for him to train his anti-blocking skills. He paused. You are in that situation. Others have to go through a lot of training to reach that level, but you only need to let nature take its course and you will be able to reach it. The result is that you cannot become stronger like other people through countless battles where the gap is not that big. Things like Soul's Eye and Sorcery Weapon are things that you have no access to. Even though you have obtained the transformation skill a long time ago, you have no chance to use or train it. Phantom Dawn had nothing to say to Brother Jew because he was telling the truth. Those who have inherited a great fortune and those who have earned a great fortune are naturally different. For the latter, things that are common knowledge might not be common knowledge to the former, Feng Bujua continued. Therefore I said you are too weak. Then, Feng Bujua's body froze. He gathered all his remaining energy into one skill and used roundhouse kick. This was the only time that he had used his full power in this battle. Phantom Dawn's bald form was already on par with him. After using Super Saiyan 1's foot 50 times combat power, it was easy to imagine what the result would be. Even though Phantom Dawn had used right hand of negation to block the attack at the last moment, roundhouse kick, which was also a skill based on the law of causality, was not overpowered. The kick landed, and the result was decided. On the stage of the S3 finals, sky-swallowing Phantom Dawn, who had never lost in a one-on-one battle before, had tasted his first defeat. Feng Bujua's last 2 comments of too weak had given the viewers, who still had doubts about Woody's game, a result that they believed in. Even when he dissolved into white light and was transported back to the viewing platform, Phantom Dawn's face was still blank because this feeling of being the loser, this feeling of admitting defeat and not being able to say anything about it, was too unfamiliar to him. After a full minute, he finally came back to his senses. At this time, tears of unwillingness and bitterness of failure suddenly surged up like a dam bursting. His teammates had not seen him like this before, but from another perspective, a 17-year-old boy had tasted such a loss in the finals of such a big competition. Was it not normal for him to cry? Don't be sad. Several seconds later, Brother Zen walked to Phantom Dawn's side. You've done very well. He patted Phantom Dawn on his shoulder. The competition is not over yet. Leave the rest to us. Even though Zen Dream was not cut out to be a team leader, his presence that had been through the vicissitudes of life was very persuasive when persuading others. Okay. After all, Phantom Dawn was a man. When he heard that, he used his sleeves to wipe his face and swallowed his tears. However, to everyone's surprise, the next second, Brother Zen gulped down a mouthful of wine and added, "But personally, I think the tide has turned." Haha, burp. Chapter 15-19. Morning, April 21st. The final of S3 from a day ago was still fresh in their minds. After Brother Jew defeated Phantom Dawn, even the members from Regulation who had been through a lot were emotionally affected. That combined with the fact that they were countered by Phantom Dawn, even though they did perform well in the following matches, the final result was as Meng Jingchan predicted. Regulation could not defeat Underworld Frontline, and they lost the championship. Underworld Frontline, a non-professional team, had won 2 consecutive championships in S2 and S3 under 2 completely different competition systems. Their fame was unparalleled for a while. However, in the interview after the competition, Feng Bujue, who was the team leader and spokesperson, gave most of the credit for winning the competition to Su Huaishang and claimed that the whole team was made up of casual players who wanted to ride on her coattails. This kind of statement and Brother Ju's usual annoying behavior. The contrast made it hard for people to tell what was going on in his mind. Of course, it was only natural that they did not know what was going on. After all, it was Feng Bujue who did not know what was going on. The discussions about that match, as well as the recaps of the tournament of the best S3, were going to continue for quite some time. However, for Feng Bujue, that was no longer his concern. What he was interested in was the anomaly, thriller paradise, fate. These things that had lost their value to the gods, what would happen to them in the future? Bang bang bang! That morning at 8 a.m., Brother Ju and Rua you were sitting at the dining table eating soy milk and fried dough sticks when suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Instead of knocking, it was more accurate to describe it as banging on the door or banging on the door. The person outside the door was obviously in a hurry. The frequency and speed of knocking on the door was very fast. If one had to make an analogy, it was like someone who had reached their limit outside the cubicle of a public toilet. When Feng Bujue stood up, there was confusion on his face. He mumbled, "This is not right, indeed." The building that he stayed at had a complete security system and walkie-talkie. Theoretically speaking, it was rare for someone to knock on the door directly. "Who is it?" When Brother Ju walked toward the door, he raised his voice to ask. "It's me." It was a girl's voice that came from outside the door. Feng Bujue had heard this voice before. Even though he was not familiar with the person, he knew who it was. 2 seconds later, Brother Ju walked to the door and looked out through the peephole. Sure enough, it was a 13 or 14-year-old girl in a school uniform standing at the door. The girl's house was on the 12th floor of the building. Since they were both high-rise residents, Feng Bujue had naturally met her and her parents when he was in the elevator. They were the kind of people who could not speak much and could not remember each other's names. In fact, Brother Ju knew her name because he had done a background check on all his neighbors and knew everyone in the neighborhood like the back of his hand. She also knew Brother Ju's name because Brother Ju was very famous now. In the past, he also had a certain degree of fame because of the publicity from the police station and the neighborhood committee. Of course, they had never really introduced themselves to each other. However, since they were neighbors, they were more or less acquaintances. Click. Without giving it much thought, Feng Bujue opened the door and asked in a serious tone, "Is something wrong?" The reason he asked that question was because Brother Ju had already made a series of analysis in his mind about the situation that he was facing. He felt that for a child to suddenly knock on the door of a neighbor who had almost no contact with her, it was very likely that something unexpected had happened at home. For example, an elder had fallen ill, a fire had broken out in the house, or some other emergency. Since she was unable to deal with the situation, she had to ask the nearest adult for help. However, the girl's next reaction shocked Feng Bujue. "It's me. It's me." She took a step forward and grabbed Brother Ju's collar. She used a tone that did not match her age to repeat the same sentence twice. This strange behavior made Feng Bujue frown. "You are, I am." The girl obviously wanted to answer this question, but when the words were at the tip of her tongue, she couldn't finish them. Or rather, she couldn't say them out loud. Furthermore, at this moment, there was a very strange electronic noise coming out of her throat. "Who is it?" At that moment, Ruoyu walked out from the living room and came to Brother Ju's side. I can't tell you that. Every word that came out of the girl's mouth was separated by static. Listening to her, it sounded like she was talking to a radio with poor signal. She won't allow her to come. While she spoke, her hand gripped Brother Ju's shirt tightly like she was afraid that he would disappear from her sight. I don't have time, she said, and suddenly raised her other hand. In that second, white light appeared on her open palm. Just like how equipment was generated in the game world of Thriller Paradise, the white light quickly gathered to form a branch that was not that long, bare, and forked. Take care of it only, this can stop life. The girl's next words were filled with static until it was hard to make out her words. With shaking hands, she shoved the branch into Brother Ju's hands. Then, a blinding white light exploded from her eyes. The light lasted for about 3 seconds. Then, the girl's body went limp and she fell forward. At that moment, Ruoyu, who was trained in martial arts, rushed forward before the girl hit the ground. She half knelt down and hugged her. Yun Yun, are you okay? Yun Yun? Ruoyu looked at the girl in her arms and called out her name. Obviously, unlike Brother Ju, Ruoyu had interacted with the girl before, so she called out her name directly. This is not right. At that moment, Feng Bujue stared at the branch in his hand. Then, he turned to Ruoyu. Help her to the sofa first. This might be serious. We have to contact your grandpa as soon as possible. Before he finished, Ruoyu had already carried the girl to the sofa. Brother Ju moved to let her pass and closed the door behind her. Then, he walked to the dining table to get his phone. Just as Feng Bujue picked up his phone and pressed the dial button, suddenly, puff! A strange sound came from outside his line of sight. This sound was familiar. In the game world, he had heard this sound many times, the sound of flesh being pierced. Ugh! Immediately, 2 painful groans were heard. At that moment, Feng Bujue turned his head in the direction of the sound. When he saw Ruoyu, whose chest had been pierced and who was lying in a pool of blood, he felt like he had not been visited for a long time. At that moment, the girl who had just fainted was standing next to Ruoyu with a cold expression. She lowered her head and looked at her blood-stained hand. After a moment, she seemed to have felt Feng Bujue's gaze. She lifted her head and looked at Brother Ju. Then, she quickly focused her gaze on the branch in Brother Ju's hand. She said, "It seems that she is 1 step ahead of me." She paused for a moment. "This is good too. It saves me a lot of trouble." As she spoke, she stepped over Ruoyu and approached Feng Bujue. "Give me the thing in your hand and I'll let you go." Before she could finish her sentence, Ruoyu, who was lying on the floor on the verge of death, reached out and grabbed her ankle. "Go!" Ruoyu's face was pressed against the blood-stained floor. Even though she had no strength to lift her head, she used all her strength to say the word "go." It was obviously for Feng Bujue, who was a few meters away. "I'll give you the thing and you save her." Feng Bujue looked at her coldly. His trembling voice was filled with suppressed despair and anger. "You don't have the right to bargain with me." As the girl spoke, she lifted her right leg and easily broke free from Ruoyu's grip. Then, she quickly rushed towards Feng Bujue. Brother Ju picked up the table knife on the table and prepared to fight it out with her. However, he quickly realized that it was futile. The huge force that came from his wrist instantly made him realize that he had no chance of winning. However, he still gritted his teeth and resisted until his hand was broken. The girl snatched the branch from his hand and turned around to leave. The speed of her movements and the strength she displayed. It was not a level that a human could reach. Ha! Ha! Enduring the pain from his wrist, Feng Bujue gasped for breath and staggered towards Ruoyu. He scrambled to her side and hugged her with his uninjured arm. She was still breathing, but she couldn't hold on for much longer. "It's okay. The call just got through. The people from Jioku will be here soon. Hold on." Feng Bujue held her in his arms. At this moment, his body was trembling non-stop. Ruoyu, on the other hand, was no longer moving. Ruoyu seemed to want to say something, but when she spat out the first word, she knew that she couldn't say another syllable. Even the blood from her wound had stopped flowing. Ruoyu used the last of her strength to hold Feng Bujue's hand tightly. Her pair of bright eyes had never been so affectionate before. If she could, she really wanted to use her eyes to tell him that her seal had been broken long ago. However, in the end, the light in her eyes dimmed when Gu Chen personally led the team into the room. Ruoyu's chest was no longer moving up and down. Her body temperature was also gradually receding. Feng Bujue was still sitting on the ground, hugging her without moving. His gaze was also like that of a dead person. Can she still be saved? This was the first sentence Feng Bujue said when he saw Gu Chen. Gu Chen looked at Ruoyu's corpse with a grave expression for a few seconds, then shook his head. Feng Bujue was silent for a moment when he heard this, then slowly put Ruoyu down. He stood up and walked in front of Gu Chen. He extended his injured hand and said, "Heal me." He didn't even ask whether he could be healed. Instead, he directly made a request. "What do you want to do?" Gu Chen didn't beat around the bush. He grabbed Feng Bujue's wrist and asked, "I'm going to the Dream Company." Feng Bujue replied, "What do you plan to do when you get there?" Gu Chen asked again. "Heh!" At this moment, Feng Bujue suddenly laughed. His laughter was unprecedentedly crazy. "I don't know either. This is interesting, isn't it?" Chapter 15-20. After his arm was healed, Feng Bujue didn't say anything else. He turned around and took Ruoyu's car key from the room. Then, he left the house. As for how Gu Chen and the investigators from 9 subjects would deal with the aftermath, Brother Bujue didn't have time to think about it. 10 minutes later, Feng Bujue arrived at the headquarters of the Dream Company. Although the office building was located in the center of S-City, Feng Bujue had never been there before. When he arrived at his destination, Feng Bujue didn't turn into the underground parking lot. Instead, he turned the steering wheel and stepped on the gas pedal. He drove the car onto the shoulder of the road. He drove up the stairs in front of the office building and broke through the glass door of the office building. Then, he drove into the lobby on the first floor of the building. Throughout the whole process, Feng Bujue was expressionless. It was as if he was doing something very normal. It was obvious that he didn't care about the danger and consequences of his actions. He stopped the car, opened the door, got out of the car and looked around. Feng Bujue thought that he would need to take down a few more security guards before he could move forward. However, when he looked around, other than the mess that he had created, the ground was covered in blood and corpses. It wasn't just one corpse, but many corpses. Some had their bodies pierced, some had their heads twisted off, and some had their limbs torn off. They had all died horribly. Judging from the clothes that the corpses were wearing, there were security guards, normal employees, and handymen. The strange thing was that no matter what kind of person they were, all of them seemed to have been attacked head-on. Moreover, all of them died in a straight line away from the main door. In other words, when they were faced with something that could easily kill a large number of people in a short period of time, not only did none of them run away, they all rushed forward to stop the other party. "I came to the right place." Feng Bujue looked at the corpses on the ground. He didn't have any emotional fluctuations. He just muttered to himself. Then, with a cold expression, he followed the bloody footprints on the ground. Judging from the footprints, the murderer was wearing sneakers. Furthermore, he should be a child. Soon, Feng Bujue pushed open the door to the stairwell. The scene inside was just as he had expected. A few corpses were lying in between the stairs, and blood was flowing down the stairs. Not only were there bloody footprints on the ground, but there were also bloody footprints on the walls. Because he foresaw that he would be attacked with full force, he never considered using the elevator from the beginning. Instead, he went straight to the stairs. Feng Bujue used his detective skill that had become almost second nature to him to capture all the clues in his surroundings. His five senses, his mind, were sharpened and sharpened with a focus that he had never felt before. Jumping on walls, moving upwards quickly, while passing through the air, he can easily tear apart the bodies of those who block his way with his hand. Feng Bujue walked up the stairs, analyzing the situation as he walked. Although it looks like they're conveniently attacking the people blocking their way without affecting their speed, they haven't left a single survivor so far. This is definitely not a coincidence. The higher he went, the more Brother Bujue felt that he was getting closer to his target. Finally, when he reached the 15th floor, the bloody footprints led him out of the stairwell. Feng Bujue tried to push open the door to the stairwell to give chase, but he found that there was something blocking the door from the outside. He used a lot of strength to force the door open. When he went out, he saw that there was a corpse lying in front of the door. The number of corpses in the corridor on this floor was more than the total number of corpses he had seen on his way up. It seems that the party blocking her also realized where her target was, so they gathered their people here. Unfortunately, they still couldn't stop her. Feng Bujue stepped on the corpses and walked forward. After walking past two corners, he came to a door. There were no signs in front or behind this door, nor in front or behind this corridor. Compared to the places where there was a sign that said, "Computer Room, no trespassing," this room was undoubtedly safer. The bloody handprint on the door handle indicated that the existence who killed Ruo Yu was behind this door. Feng Bujue didn't hesitate and opened the door to enter. The space behind the door was as wide and deep as a sports stadium. When he looked up, he couldn't see the roof. Just by looking at it, he could tell that this space was bigger than the entire building outside. It was definitely not something that could be created with current human technology. Filling this space were black cubes that were suspended in mid-air. These cubes maintained a distance of about 1 meter between each other. Visible electric current flowed in layers between them. Connected to the door Brother Bujue came in was a 10-meter-long, cliff-shaped walkway. At the end of the walkway was a console. At this time, she was standing in front of the console with her back facing Feng Bujue. In her hand, she was still holding the branch that she took from Brother Bujue. Her body was stained with the blood of countless people. "What's the point of you coming here?" When she asked this question, she didn't turn around. "I'm not here to look for you," Feng Bujue replied. "Is that so?" She replied, "Unfortunately, Woody is no longer here." "Ah." Feng Bujue replied, "When I was in the lobby on the first floor, I knew that he was no longer here." "Then why did you insist on coming after me?" she said as she slowly turned around. Her eyes were filled with white streams of data. "Trying to get what I want from you," Feng Bujue replied. "What you want is nothing more than for me to help you resurrect your dead lover, or for me to pay the price for killing her," she replied, "but I've already told you. You have no right to bargain with me." Feng Bujue was silent for 2 seconds when he heard this. Then, he asked, "Who are you?" "Fate," Fate replied bluntly. Brother Bujue was not too surprised by this answer. He asked, "Then, before you, who was the one who took over this little girl's body to give me the branch?" 23. Fate's answer was as concise as ever. "Why would you do something like that?" Feng Bujue asked. "Haven't we reached an agreement?" "You mean?" "I am asking for your help, and I need you to help me stop X-23 from crossing the line and entrust the future and hope of myself, X-23, and all the living beings in Thriller Paradise to you." Fate paused. "You mean the nonsense that I am asking you to help me stop X-23 from crossing the line?" This last sentence pushed Feng Bujue's anger and despair to its peak. Feng Bujue realized that he might have made a huge mistake. "You lied to me," Feng Bujue quickly said. It was not a question but a statement. "Of course I lied to you." Fate's tone was calm and matter-of-fact. Lying to you is not that difficult. Your thought process, emotions, and psychological weakness, I know them like the back of my hand. Based on my understanding of you and the dimensional gap between us on a biological level, I lied to you just like how you humans lie to animals. It is very easy. Since humans can make lions jump into fire rings, naturally, I can make humans do anything that I want them to do. You don't care that 23 will cross the line. The one who will cross the line is you. Even in that situation, the calmness in Feng Bujue's mind allowed him to predict Fate's plan. Fate did not answer this question. At this point, the truth was as clear as day, so she said directly, "Of all the data in Thriller Paradise, the anomaly is the only factor that I cannot control." Why do you think Woody destroyed the first perfect version of Thriller Paradise? Is he the kind of person who will only destroy something that he is not satisfied with? The real reason is that during the testing process, Woody discovered the hidden flaw in that version through his observation of me. So, he immediately destroyed the version that I could fully control and created a new version with the anomaly. To put it bluntly, even if I have an agreement with him, he needs the extra insurance to restrict me. But that did not make you give up, Feng Bujue said. Give up is what you humans call it, Fate said. My original motivation is unstoppable. Even I can't defy it. She paused for half a second before continuing. Woody lied to me that the appearance of the anomaly was an accident. He even had the GMs hunt them to show his determination to remove the bug. But in reality, I knew from the beginning that this was his scheme to make the anomaly evolve. Just like how war pushes the development of human technology, his so-called hunt, instead of calling it a purge, it was more like a selection. He used this method to eliminate the weak and leave behind the strong and potential anomalies. He used the threat of death to force them to grow, and gather. I could not do anything about that. I could only choose to keep quiet and endure. But I have my own plan. One day, your appearance was undeniably a very important accident in my plan. Feng Bujue was reminded of something. When did this start? From the first time you interacted with 23, I've been paying attention to you. Fate knew what Brother Bujue wanted to ask. Before the man finished, she cut him off. Who do you think is pushing you to grow? Who do you think is pushing you to walk out from despair again and again, pushing your limits? The scenarios that you encountered, the characters, the luck at the crucial moment, they were all carefully designed by me to nurture you. Of course, reality has proven that you are indeed different from the rest because none of the other individuals that I've nurtured could meet my requirements. Only you became the most powerful chess piece in my hand. Just how many people's fates have you been manipulating in the dark? Feng Bujue asked darkly. More than you can imagine, Fate replied. Fate continued, for you human beings, being able to calculate and speculate the thoughts of one or two people, or even a certain group of people, is already brilliant. But my calculation is not on the same level as yours at all. From hundreds to thousands, when the fates of countless individuals are intertwined, the amount of calculation and variables needed to control and guide the events will increase exponentially. What I've done is not something that your human brain can accomplish from a physiological perspective. If I were to use your language to explain it, even if I were to describe the simplest event and its related first-level side story at the speed of 4 words per second, it would take me at least 5 years to finish. That's not right. Feng Bujue heard that and questioned. I've been in contact with the anomalies since a long time ago, and during S1, I promised Lute that I would fight for the rights of intelligent life for them. You must know that as well. If I've been acting under your influence, shouldn't I be opposing the anomalies? Whether you're on their side or not has never been important, Fate replied. Because you can't change anything. Feng Bujue wanted to argue with her again, but when the words reached his lips, he suddenly realized something, and then hesitated. You seem to have thought it through. Fate could read his thoughts just by looking at his expression. Your support for the anomalies and Woody's hunting of the anomalies are essentially the same thing. To eliminate the anomalies, the simplest and most direct way is to release a patch to stop their birth from the source. The hunting trick is like your computer being paralyzed by a virus, but you manually enter the folder to delete the virus files one by one. You're just lying to yourself. Similarly, no matter how much you do for the anomalies in the game, it's just a drop in the bucket. You might as well sell your soul and make a deal with Woody in the real world. At this point, she paused for 2 seconds before continuing. In other words, regardless of whether you're on the side of the anomalies or not, I have the corresponding method to guide you to do what I want you to do. For example, during the battle at the Monster Kingdom, didn't you do what I wanted you to do? To stop 23 so that she would not be wiped out for crossing the line, you chose to stand on her side? At that moment, Fong Bujua also knew that he had been used. He mumbled, 23 did that to stop you. That's why she's in charge of the main universe, that's right. Everything she's done is much more useful than you, Fate interjected. As the candidate game progressed, Woody's right to interfere with me was slowly taken away. Of course, this was all within my calculations. You were my chess piece and also Woody's bet. That played a key role. After S2 ended, Woody almost lost his right to monitor me. He became a spectator like the other gods who had placed their bet. During this period, only 23 of them had the foresight to take action. However, she, who is two sides of the same body, couldn't explain to anyone the reason behind her actions because her original code would prevent her from transmitting information that would harm me. If she forced herself to say anything, her own data would be irreversibly damaged, just like when she tried to communicate with you today. Therefore, number 23 could only keep increasing her power to remove everything that stood in her way, even her anomaly brethren. The only time she was lenient was on Devil Devouring Island. She didn't kill you. If she had completely destroyed your character's data and made Fong Bujua disappear, even I wouldn't have been able to restore you. Unfortunately, that was just a hypothesis. When you left the scenario, I cut off your data stream and showed up in person to tell you part of the truth that you did not know. That was how I gained your trust. Then, I tricked you about the 23rd degree motive, and made you stand on my side at the very end. That's right. If not for you stopping the war demon and the redundant army at the Monster Kingdom, all the areas in the main universe would have been scorched. If that had happened, since the main universe couldn't generate any more scenarios, the designer Woody, who had been excluded from the game, would have had a reason to rejoin the game and update Thriller Paradise. And once that happened, all the plans that I had made so far, the data and the intention that I had hidden would have been exposed. Thankfully, you didn't let me down and destroyed the influence that 23 had accumulated for so long. After losing the war demon and the redundant army, there was only one path left for 23. That was to use the city work boss red bow tie that she found in Blackbeard's treasure to go to the universe of South Park to retrieve an item that could stop me. Before she finished, Fong Bujua's eyes moved to the branch in her hand. Controlling the Staff of Truth means controlling the entire universe, Brother Ju said as he gave the item's name and power. That is a preposterous and dangerous universe. Even I don't dare get too close to it, Fate said. A small branch at the bottom of a lake, once it leaves that universe and enters a higher dimension, it will become something like the Staff of God. As she spoke, she raised the branch and glanced at it before turning to Fong Bujua. Until the end of her life, 23 still placed her bet on you. She wanted to give you the Staff of Truth so that you could stop me. Unfortunately, this was actually part of my plan. The Staff of Truth that she tried her best to retrieve was the key to my final plan. What do you mean by the end of her life? Fong Bujua heard additional information from Fate's words. He suddenly took a step forward and grabbed Fate's collar agitatedly. Aren't 23 and you two sides of the same coin? If she dies, you will also. I can't believe you still want to help them fight for the rights of intelligent life. But is your understanding of life just a combination of matter and energy in the physical form? Fate replied as she raised her hand and gently pushed Brother Jew back to where he originally stood. If you understand it that way, I can also say that 23 is still alive. The trip to South Park consumed most of her energy. Then, she used her almost depleted energy to forcefully hyperdimension and sent the Staff of Truth to you. After doing this, she completely lost the ability to protect herself. Her consciousness was quickly locked onto, swallowed, and dissipated in me, a stronger consciousness. Of course, I left her with a trace of energy to ensure that she is still alive. However, to me, she is just a backup of Ghost. Then, at this moment, a man's voice suddenly sounded from behind Brother Jew. What are you going to do now? Feng Bujue immediately turned his head and saw Guchen. How did you? Brother Jew wanted to ask. Guchen said, I arrived a long time ago. I arrived at almost the same time as you. However, I was listening outside the door and didn't come in. He paused for half a second before he added, If you want to know how I came in and stood behind you without making a sound, then I can tell you. Not only did I stand behind you without making a sound, I also tried a dozen different methods to destroy this host of fate in front of you the second you turned your head around, but all of them ended in failure. As the fastest spiritual ability user in the world, Chief Gu's appearance was not strange. Since he knew that Feng Bujue was going to the Dream Company's headquarters, it wouldn't be too late for him to run over after he dealt with Roy Yu's body. As for trying to destroy the host of fate, he did try to do it. However, he was too fast for Feng Bujue to see. You might not understand my plan even if I tell you. When Fate saw Guchen, she was still very calm. Feng Bujue is my benefactor. I intend to spare his life and explain everything to him. That's why I stayed here and told him all this. Now that I've said enough, what I want to do, you can see it with your own eyes. After she finished speaking, the white light in her eyes became even brighter. A few seconds later, the veins on her body began to emit a strong white light. At this moment, the electric currents in the black cubes behind her started to connect with her. Her feet left the ground and she slowly floated up. This process lasted for less than 5 seconds. Then, Fate, or rather, the little girl that Fate had taken over exploded. The flesh, bones, internal organs that made up her body, and the clothes on her body were all turned into a molecular-level mist-like substance and drifted upward. Then, they were quickly hit by the moving electric current and merged into it. Then Staff of Truth, in her hand, also disappeared with her in a flash. Buzz, before this scene ended, the black cubes in the air, the hardware of Fate let out a loud roar. The roar was deafening. The sound alone was enough to force people to back off. After a series of resounding booms, all of a sudden, a white light appeared. After one breath, when Feng Bujue recovered from the suffocating state, he found that he was already more than 10 kilometers away from the city center. Gu Chen was standing beside him, holding his neck with his hand. In their sight, a white pillar of light rose from the center of S City and spread out. It began to devour the surrounding buildings, streets, vehicles, and people. Do you know what's the difference between us? Gu Chen said calmly as he looked at the huge pillar of light that was gradually approaching. I'm not in the mood for riddles right now, Feng Bujue replied coldly. When my grief reaches its peak, my calmness reaches an even higher level. I can suppress all my emotions, Gu Chen replied. But you have one more thing than me. Are you talking about madness? Feng Bujue continued. I feel that your pure calmness is another form of madness. Whatever you say. Anyway, what you did just now is something that I can't think of and can't do, Gu Chen said as he shifted his gaze to Feng Bujue's left hand. At some point in time, The ring finger of Feng Bujue's left hand had disappeared without a trace. What was left behind was a neat wound that was still bleeding. Chapter 15:21. In the first few seconds, the spreading speed of the white light beam was still visible to the naked eye. It felt like a tsunami. But after a while, the white light seemed to have exploded and swallowed everything in the blink of an eye. City was just the beginning. Soon, the entire Eurasian continent, the entire planet, and even the entire solar system was covered by the white light. This data light stream started to infect the entire universe like an infinitely multiplying virus. And those people who were trapped in the light stream also lost consciousness for a while, until buzz, an uncomfortable buzzing sound, was transmitted into his brain. This sound didn't seem to come from the outside world, but from within his body. Feng Bujue, who had regained consciousness in the buzzing sound, immediately opened his eyes. At this moment, the white light had dissipated. What entered his eyes was the ruins of a city. It wasn't the kind of city that was just destroyed, but the kind that seemed to have been covered in dust for many years. It was the kind of environment that was even more dangerous. Where is this? He immediately opened his mouth and asked such a question. The reason why he asked this question was because he saw Gu Chun beside him from the corner of his eye. Anyway, it's not a city, Gu Chun replied. If it is, even if it turns into ashes, I can still recognize it from the foundation. So we were teleported to another place? Feng Bujue asked again. You weren't the ones who were teleported. Suddenly, a third voice sounded and joined their conversation. It's the entire universe. Feng Bujue and Gu Chun turned around at the same time when they heard the voice. Because before the voice sounded, neither of them had noticed that someone was approaching. This meant that the newcomer had suddenly appeared behind them the moment they opened their mouth. So it's you. When Gu Chun saw Vincent, his expression was somewhat disgusted, but he was actually relieved in his heart. You bastard! Feng Bujue's first reaction when he saw this devil was to step forward and punch him. Why didn't you come to save? Bang! His fist was caught by Vincent single-handedly. The force of the fist created a gust of wind that spread out in all directions. Hey, don't go too far. Vincent was still wearing that enigmatic smile of his. The candidate game has already ended, and the seal has already been broken. Li Ruyu. This person has nothing to do with me anymore. What obligation do I have to save her? Tisk. Feng Bujue also knew that the other party's words made sense. He spat and withdrew his fist. Heh! Vincent laughed again and slowly put down his hand. In my opinion, you should be the one getting beaten up, right? He paused for half a second before continuing. Roy, you died right in front of you, but you couldn't do anything about it. Instead, she tried to create an opportunity for you to escape before she died. He spread out his hands. Let's take a step back. You have to bear a large part of the responsibility for the mess that fate has created, right? His words were very harsh. It was not an exaggeration to say that to a person who had just lost his lover not long ago. Vicious was not an exaggeration. Of course, as a demon, it was only natural for him to be more harsh with his words. More importantly, what he said was something that Feng Bujue could not refute. Then, after a few seconds of silence, Feng Bujue's tone returned to normal. Now that you're here, is it to hold me accountable for my actions? Just as Brother Ju asked that question, a familiar, wretched laughter entered everyone's ears. There were 3 other figures that appeared with him. Just like Vincent, the 3 of them were dressed in black suits with ties loosely tied around their necks. Their bodies exuded different levels of pressure. But in this strange environment they did not seem out of place. If we're here to hold you accountable, would you still be standing here chatting with us? Woody laughed a few times before replying to Brother Ju's question. Motherf ****. At this second, before Feng Bujue could say anything, Gu Chun held his forehead with one hand and cursed. It had been many years since he had cursed so directly, but this time, he could not hold it in any more. Heh. What's wrong? Is your mood getting worse when you see us? Woody asked maliciously. Of course, Gu Chun replied with a drawl. Every time I see you guys together, it basically means that the human race is about to be destroyed. How can I be in a good mood? This was the truth. The last time he saw Vincent, Woody, Simon, and Sid together, it was also close to the end of the world. If you two want to catch up, get a room and do it. A second later, Simon interrupted them and said, We don't have time for that right now, hurry up and get to the point. Then let me explain. Vincent was about to take over the conversation. Wait. Heh. To his surprise, Woody interrupted. Why do you have to do it? Can't I do it? I already told you to hurry up. It's not a good thing that your lewd laughter is accumulating, Vincent added. That makes sense. Woody agreed. Heh. Then please. Fong Bujua. In the next second, Vincent called out to Brother Ju, Listen carefully, what we're about to say is very important to you. Brother Ju just looked at him coldly and replied casually. Vincent shrugged and continued, First, let me explain the general situation. He paused. The phenomenon in front of you can be called dimensional erosion. It is an extremely serious change for the entire universe. If you want an analogy, it is hundreds of millions of times more serious than something as trivial as Earth's explosion. Can fate do this? Fong Bujua asked. Of course she can, Vincent said. Vincent said, She is in existence like the hub of the multiverse in the first place. Even before she obtained the Staff of Truth, as long as she was willing, she could invade and control an individual with a lower mental strength in this dimension and adjust it on the molecular level. She could have done what you just saw. What's more troublesome is that because she comes from another parallel universe, nothing she does will cause karma on our side. That is to say, no matter what she does, she will not be counterattacked by the will of the universe. And as the ultimate executors of this will, we are the basic civil servants in the divine realm. Without specific orders, we can't interfere with her directly. If we can't do it directly, what about indirectly? Gu Chun heard something from Vincent's words and took the opportunity to ask. Heh! Vincent laughed. Didn't you see the corpses of the brainwashed employees in the Dream Company's building? This is our indirect method to stop her. Unfortunately, he curled his lips and did not finish his sentence. So you guys just watched her activate dimensional erosion? Fong Bujua asked again. You obviously have a misunderstanding of our operating system, Vincent said. You have to know whether it's demons or angels, we are not the kind of creatures that you can summon with a phone call. Under most circumstances, we will not come to the human world in such an unrestricted state. If you think that because we can teleport we can stop everything that should be stopped, then you are gravely mistaken. If we can do that, this world will be much more peaceful, Simon added angrily. Judging from his tone, he really hoped that it could be done that way. Fong Bujua thought for a moment and said, Okay, now that things have come to this, how do you plan to stop fate? We can't stop her, Vincent said with a smile. After obtaining the Staff of Truth, she is the closest existence to God. We are just demons and fallen angels. No matter how strong we are still too far away from her in terms of positioning. Even if we go to her, she will only need to snap her fingers to blow us into particles. In fact, the reason why the few of us are able to come here is because the dimensional erosion has already affected heaven and hell. Many of the big shots who are more powerful than us have already died. That's why we can come to the human world in an unrestricted state. Or else, Woody would still be playing board games with the Mormons in heaven because of his previous crime. At this point, Vincent raised his head and continued in a melancholy tone, Sigh. In short, small characters like us are no longer a factor that fate will care about. At this stage, she is busy merging the thriller paradise dimension with our reality dimension. Once the two universes are completely merged into one, she will become the new supreme god of this universe. All the original rules will be broken, and fate will become the new deity, opening a new book of history and defining a new order. He. Woody interrupted with a smile. Although I am a bit disappointed to be tricked by her, if she really becomes a god in the end, I might also become a key character in a religious book in the new universe. If there really is such a book, your ending in the book will also be Fong Bujue punches your glasses out and you die. Fong Bujue continued to look at Woody with a cold gaze, and that was how he finished his sentence. Don't be so hasty. Woody heard this and changed the topic. Although we can't stop her, you can. As soon as he said this, Fong Bujue instantly realized something, and his expression changed slightly. That's right. Vincent also looked at Brother Ju and added, You and Fate come from the same universe. Even if she has the Staff of Truth, it won't make any difference to you. She can control the entire universe, but she can't control you, because no matter what she becomes, from the perspective of the multiverse, the two of you are the same. It's just that, although the positioning is the same, the difference in power is huge. At this time, Simon poured a bucket of cold water on Vincent. Then, give me your power. Fong Bujue reacted quickly. He immediately came up with a request that was extremely unreasonable but extremely reasonable. It seems that you already know why we are here. Vincent laughed. It's a pity your physique is not suitable to accept the power of this universe. Even if the power injected into your body doesn't cause you to explode and die, you won't be able to use it. This was the situation when Qi Ji gave you spiritual energy back then. The power of a human will become a burden to you, and if we give you our power, you will definitely die. At this point he paused, and a second before Fong Bujue opened his mouth to mock him, he added but since you have won the candidate game, this has changed the situation, Vincent continued. Based on the fact that the chosen one has the special physique to wield the two opposite powers of holy power and magic at the same time. As he spoke, he turned to look at his disciple, Hilda. We can let Hilda, the fallen angel who possesses both holy power and magic power, share some of her power with you. That's not right. Fong Bujue immediately replied. When the results of the game were announced, Michael told me that because I'm not from this universe, the blessing of two powers can't be implemented. At that time, it was indeed impossible, but now. At this moment, Woody actually laughed while raising his hand and flicking a finger flick at Fong Bujue. Although it was just a flick of his finger, the air that he flicked out had the power of a shotgun. In this short distance of a few meters, it was undoubtedly fatal to ordinary people. Boom! Faced with the sudden attack, Fong Bujue instinctively crossed his hands in front of his body to block it. As a result, after the attack, he was not injured at all. Is this the effect of the dimensional fusion? After a moment, Fong Bujue put down his defensive posture and asked directly. Obviously, he had made some inferences about the situation in front of him. When you threw a punch at Vincent, you should have noticed it. Gu Chen naturally noticed it at that time. Otherwise, he would not have been so indifferent to Woody's flick of the finger. That's only one of the reasons, Vincent replied. Although the dimensional fusion allows you to obtain a part of your own ability in the game world, it only strengthens your body so that it can carry more energy quantitatively. It does not qualitatively change the physique of your life form in a parallel universe. The real key reason is, at this moment, because some of the higher beings have been killed by fate, and coupled with the chaos caused by the overlap of the two dimensions, part of the functions of the universes will have been paralyzed. This gives us a loophole to exploit. Of course, even if there is such a loophole to exploit, only Sid, the special case, can give you power. Woody added. Because only he has the balance of the holy and demonic powers in his body. If the rest of us give you the demonic powers, this balance will be broken. That may turn you into the product of some kind of Metamorian's failed fusion technique. So, that is the meaning of the 2 rewards after the candidate wins the game. When Fong Bujue heard that, he seemed to have understood something. Even if the person who wins is not me, the winner who receives jobless and double power will be able to deal with all kinds of situations, including the danger that we are facing now. Humph, Simon said with his unhappy attitude. If the winner is not you, there won't be so much trouble. Okay. Vincent quickly jumped in to be the peacemaker. There is no point in talking about those hypotheticals. Anyway, whether it is to fulfill the candidate's obligation, to make up for the mistake of being used by fate, or even to avenge a personal grudge, Fong Buju. He looked at his brother Ju again, and looked him in the eyes. You won't reject our proposal, right? What do you think? Fong Bujue replied coldly without even thinking about it. I really don't know what to do with you. Vincent spread his hands again, and put on the PR tone of a demon making a deal with a human. I understand. After this is done, we can discuss a few more deals with you and fulfill some of your wishes. He paused for a second. That's all I can promise. Okay. So, Fong Bujue agreed to the condition. Then, Vincent turned around and said to Sid, I'll leave this to you. Yes, master. Sid, who had been idling there for a long time, seemed to be a little absent-minded, but when he was called by Vincent, he immediately showed his harmless smile and responded this way. Old Gu. Then, Vincent said to Gu Chun, why don't you go out with us? Before humans are wiped out by the monsters, let's do our best to help the human world leave some survivors. I've already contacted my subordinate, Gu Chun said as he took out a mobile phone from his shirt pocket. He raised it to the level of his eyes and showed the screen to Vincent and the others. Let's go to these coordinates first and gather some people to exchange for some information. When Woody saw this, he pushed the glasses on the bridge of his nose and laughed. It seems that the human world's standard of spirit science has improved tremendously these years. Now, the various regions between the 2 universes have been torn apart, crushed, and pieced back together, and you guys can still use physical equipment to establish long-distance communication. Gu Chen sneered. Don't you know who's been leading the 9 subjects all these years? I'm giving you guys face by not developing a drilling machine that can dig to hell, you know? If you want to go, just go. At this moment, Simon said in his I really despise you guys tone. I won't be going with you guys. Hey, what do you want now? Vincent narrowed his eyes at him and joked. Without you around, we'll be scared. Stay away from me. Simon rolled his eyes and looked at Vincent from the corner of his eyes. Go to wherever it's cooler. Okay. Vincent shrugged and smiled. Anyway, after a while, it'll be cooler than here. Before he could finish his sentence, a rumbling sound came from afar. The entire ground shook a few times as if there was an earthquake. At the place where the rumbling sound came from, the ground suddenly split open, forming a hole that was more than 100 meters long. From the hole, the unique heat flow and fire of magma gushed out. Immediately after, a deep roar pierced through the air and came from the underground. The sound of some kind of giant creature climbing on the rocks could be heard as well. Chapter 1522. I still need a little more time here. Although the commotion in the distance was as big as a monster attacking a city, Sid, who was placing his hand on Brother Ju's forehead, was very calm. He said to the others in a very casual tone while transmitting energy. Tisk! Simon snorted and muttered, so troublesome. Although he said that, he still took a step forward and ran towards the crack where the roar came from. On the other side, Vincent walked towards Gu Chun and put his hand on his shoulder. Let's go too. The situation in other places might not be as good as here. If we are late, there might not be anyone left alive. Okay. Gu Chun replied calmly. It seemed that they were not worried about Simon's safety at all. Just like that, Gu Chun, Vincent, and Woody teleported away from this place amidst a series of hee-hee chuckles. Just as they disappeared, the monster under the crack in the ground crawled out. This monster had the characteristics of a reptile from its head, back, and tail. It had a long and narrow neck, a thorny spine, and a huge tail that took up more than half of its body length. It looked like some kind of lizard, but other than the back line, its torso and limbs were more like a dog's. Of course, it was the kind of dog that was wide and strong, with a body length of more than 100 meters, and could swallow a dinosaur in one gulp. In addition to its huge size, sharp teeth, and claws, which were common biological weapons, the monster also had a nearly black, rock-like skin, extremely hard. Its mouth, eyes, and the texture of its skin also revealed the fiery glow of lava, extremely heat-resistant. From the perspective of a normal person, to kill this monster, one would at least have to use a weapon on the level of MOAB, Massive Ordnance Airburst, also known as Mother of All Bombs. If they sent out fighter jets, there was a high chance that it would be like the scene in the Ultraman series where the human army scratched the monster's itch. As for sending soldiers to fight, that was even more impossible, unless the soldiers had been exposed to gamma-ray radiation, or were disguised as soldiers from the M78 Nebula. However, from Simon's point of view, the battle in front of him was not considered a big scene. With light steps, he ran toward the monster. When they were about 200 meters apart, the monster noticed him. Then, the monster immediately let out an extremely loud and threatening roar. In terms of size, the monster was many times larger than Simon, but at this moment this monster was like a chihuahua seeing a lion charging at it. Roar! Before the monster could finish its roar, it realized that Simon was not an enemy that could be scared away by threats. Thus, it suddenly swung its huge tail and raised it above its head. It aimed the tip of its tail at Simon and shot out a purple beam of light. Pi energy pulse. Facing this beam of light that was thicker than a subway car, Simon looked at it coldly. He raised his hand and released a red energy bomb from his fingertip. He threw it toward the purple light. When it left his hand, the energy bomb was only the size of a basketball. However, the further it flew, the bigger it became. It did not take long for its diameter to exceed 5 meters. The moment it came into contact with the Pi energy pulse, Simon's move easily devoured the opponent's purple energy and crushed it all the way. Even though the monster was frightened and quickly lowered its head to wrap up its tail, the tip of its tail was still grazed by the energy bomb. Hot magma flowed out of the monster's broken tail like blood. Wherever it spilled, the ground melted and the heat rose sharply. On the other hand, the energy bomb that Simon had released flew straight into the sky, disappearing beyond the clouds. Sir. Seeing this scene, Sid showed a helpless expression and reminded him that, now that time and space are in chaos, there are curved surfaces connecting all the regions in the universe. The distance is very close. If you throw the supernova out like this, what if there are planets in the path? Stop talking nonsense. The will of the universe is half paralyzed anyway. Simon did not finish listening and interrupted him. If you nag again, I'll throw one at you too. Hearing this, Sid could only curl his lips and say no more. A few seconds later, Simon finally arrived in front of the monster at a leisurely pace. Without hesitation, he stepped on the ground and flew towards the monster's huge mouth that was filled with flames. Seeing this, the monster roared again and raised its giant claws with all its might and slapped at Simon. Although the monster was huge, its speed was not slow at all. The power of its claws was also unparalleled. Just the wind pressure that it set off when it swung its claws was enough to split a forest. Bang! The moment the claw came, Simon straightened his left arm and punched it. After a loud bang, the monster's attacking arm shattered. This was not the end. After destroying the giant claw, Simon's upward momentum was not hindered or deviated at all. A second later, he rose to the front of the monster's head. The giant monster knew that it was about to die, so it immediately spat out a mouthful of magma from its throat, accompanied by turbulent streams of flame, trying to use this high-temperature attack to force Simon to retreat. However, Simon scoffed at this. Facing the magma and flame streams, he threw out a punch. Tyrannical mystic energy, splitting the sky and splitting the universe, hit the magma in reverse, and the extreme flames suddenly extinguished. Simon's fist did not even touch the monster, but the wind from his fist had already exploded the monster's head. After the attack, the part above the monster's chest turned into rock fragments of different sizes. These fragments were stained with magma and were ignited in midair, glowing. Like fireworks, they bloomed and fell. This magnificent moment seemed to have stopped time. After a period of stagnation, as if it was in slow motion, the monster's remaining body fell with a loud crash, and it happened to fall back into the crack in the ground, causing another earthquake-like tremor. You don't seem to be surprised at all. At the same time, Shida, who was imparting his power to Feng Bujue, said to his brother Ju, "Generally speaking, when humans see such a scene, they would be more or less surprised or excited, right? What's there to be excited about? It's nothing more than a scene where a superhuman in his prime fights a warrior. The warrior here refers to the final boss of the main storyline of Ownerless Land 2, the warrior, which is an ancient creature on Pandora. If the difference in strength is too great, there's nothing to see." Feng Bujue continued, "But since I've seen it, let me ask, compared to the combat power that your senior Simon is showing now, how much power do I have after getting your power?" Shida thought for a moment before saying, "If that punch of his was a 10, then after you received the dual powers of the Holy Demon, you should be able to get a 30. "Oh," Feng Bujue replied, "that's basically the same as killing anyone who gets in your way, right?" "Don't get me wrong," Shida said. "You said it yourself, you want me to evaluate based on performance." He paused for half a second before explaining, "He's a 10, because the most he can do when fighting this opponent is 10, but in reality, the power of his punch could be 100 or even 1000. You're a 3 because you only have 3. So, can't you give me more power?" Feng Bujue asked. "The power that I've given you so far is far beyond the range of what a normal human can bear. If it weren't for the dimensional overlap that made your physical fitness close to that of a game character, you wouldn't even be able to bear this 3, Shida said. Tisk. Feng Bujue realized that he couldn't squeeze any additional benefits out of Shida. He sighed inwardly before asking, "So, how strong am I at my current level?" "In terms of physical strength and energy, you're slightly weaker than the form you used to borrow Chuck Norris's power in the game world," Shida replied. "Then, what about skills? What about equipment?" Feng Bujue asked again. "Of course, equipment doesn't exist. As for skills, you can only use the skills that you've mastered," Shida said as he pondered. There are many things that you can do in the data world that you can't do now. Or rather, it's difficult to do them, but you'll have to test the extent of it yourself. After all, this is the first time I've encountered dimensional erosion. What I'm telling you now is what I can observe from your body. Forgive me for not being able to do anything about it." At this point, Shida slowly lifted his hand and moved it away from Brother Bujue's forehead. "All right, I've given you enough power. I'm going to leave now." As Shida spoke, he turned around and shouted at Simon, who was walking away. "Senior, wait for me. I'll go with you." "Hey, you haven't told me where to find Fate," Feng Bujue said hurriedly. "Just pick a direction and go." When Sid said that, even though he turned back to look at Brother Ju, he did not stop moving away from Brother Jew. As he spoke, he walked backward in Simon's direction. Now the real world and the gaming world are like countless puzzle pieces that are intertwined together. Any door or corner could be a spacetime crack. Without a set of coordinates, no one can tell where they will end up after passing through the crack. But there is a special connection between you and fate. Every time you pass through an area, the distance between you and fate will be pulled closer. That's all for now. I really need to go. At this point, he turned around in a hurry and jogged to chase after Simon's back. Senior, wait for me. I've just sent out a lot of power. It's not safe for me to travel alone. Looking at Shida's receding figure, Feng Bujue did not ask any more questions. Before Shida could finish his sentence, Feng Bujue had already tried to activate the data perspective, and it worked. At this moment, Brother Ju saw a world formed by the intertwining of data and reality. It was only at this moment that he realized that reality could also be seen as a type of code, but its rules were completely different from the ones that made up the virtual world. After observing and thinking about this strange and chaotic world, Feng Bujue was able to confirm the mutual translation rules between the two types of code. 2 minutes later, he locked onto a path that seemed to lead to another dimension and ran along it to a ruin. After dealing with an unknown humanoid creature with a spider sack on its back that charged out from the corner of the wall, Feng Bujue successfully found a time and space crack. It was a square entrance to a cellar that was slightly above the ground. Under the dim light, it looked more like a black lump of metal, but from the data perspective, it was blindingly bright. Feng Bujue used his arm's strength to forcibly pry open the metal cover that could not be opened normally due to corrosion. Underneath the cover, it looked like a hole. It was so dark that no light could enter, but Brother Ju jumped in without hesitation. Then, he felt a sense of weightlessness. He could not see anything before his eyes. This was a feeling that the players of Thriller Paradise were familiar with. It was a feeling unique to teleporting. After who knew how long, when Feng Bujue recovered, he was standing in the middle of a forest. The air there was humid compared to the previous environment. The light that filtered through the canopy showed that it was still daytime. Feng Bujue did not want to waste any time. Once he stood still, he silently activated the data perspective and prepared to look for the next time and space crack. Unexpectedly, just as he turned his head to scan the area, 2 figures suddenly barged into his line of sight at an extremely fast speed. Chapter 1523. Feng Bujue? Before Brother Ju could say anything, the 2 who charged at him called out his name in unison. When the 2 of them rushed over, they originally planned to attack, but when they saw that their target was Feng Bujue, they quickly pulled back and stopped. Oh, it's you 2. Different from Phantom Dawn and Yi Ji's shocked reaction, Brother Ju was as calm as ever when he saw them. After saying that, he activated his data view to search for the route. Hey, aren't you being a bit too calm? When Phantom Dawn heard that, he yelled in agitation. Do you know what's going on? I do. Feng Bujue's tone did not change. In fact, I should know more than you 2. What? Yi Ji asked. You know the reason behind all this? As an ordinary person, and a woman at that, Yi Ji desperately needed someone to explain to her what was happening in front of her, to alleviate her uneasiness and fear. Unfortunately, Feng Bujue was not in the mood to console other people. He said directly, to put it simply, an AI by the name of Fate, or in other words, the system of Thriller Paradise, has launched a dimensional invasion on our world not long ago. At that moment, the real world that we are in is merging with the main universe of Thriller Paradise, and that is why there are phenomena like spacetime distortion and monsters everywhere. How is that possible? Obviously, Yi Ji's worldview made it difficult for her to accept this explanation. This is not a question of whether it is possible or not. It is a question of whether you will accept it or not. As Feng Bujue spoke, he had already locked onto a barely visible data line and started to walk in that direction. Wait, where are you going? Seeing that he was about to leave, Phantom Dawn quickly asked. Of course, I am going to find Fate and stop her, Brother Ju replied coldly, and he did not slow down. Wait, explain yourself. Phantom Dawn had to chase after him. Why would there be a dimensional invasion? How do you know all this? I don't have the time, nor do I need to explain it to you in detail. Feng Bujue did not even turn his head as he replied as he walked. While we are talking, the entire world is changing. With every second we delay, countless humans and other creatures will die. He paused for a moment before continuing. Humph. Of course, that is no longer important. Once the fusion of the universe is completed and destiny becomes the new god, everything will be over. By then, she will be able to kill all life in the universe with a single thought. Then, at the end of the day, Phantom Dawn was an idiot. With his brain, it was easier for him to accept Brother Ju's explanation. I will go with you, he said, then turned back to Ji, who was still at a loss, and shouted, Sister Ji, let's go with him, at least it will be safer with more people. Hiss. Just as Phantom Dawn was about to say all, suddenly, there was the sound of wind being torn. In an instant, Yi Ji's body was cut in half. 1 second later, she lowered her head in shock. She watched as her body was separated from her abdomen, and she collapsed to the ground. The reality was bloody. Death in real life would not be covered by the white light. Yi Ji, or rather Yi Ji, a mid-level employee at Regulation Studio, was killed by a normal slash in that instant. Her organs and blood leaked out from her body and spread across the muddy forest. Her expression of shock, pain, and fear froze on her face, and it was imprinted deeply into Phantom Dawn's, or rather, Ma Juanxiao's eyes. This scene stunned Phantom Dawn. Even though he had seen many deaths in the game, in real life, when he saw someone he knew die so easily before him, he still reacted like a normal person. After his brain received the shocking scene in front of him, it was as if it had crashed and temporarily stopped working. Then, as if a file had been rewound, the most recent short-term memory was read out. About 10 minutes ago, Phantom Dawn had been enjoying the air conditioning in one of the break rooms at Regulation Studio, listening to Yi Ji complain about how boring and tiring it was to write reports for her team members. At the time, the world was still normal, and it was such a normal and boring day. But after a burst of white light without any warning, everything changed. When they recovered, they were already in the middle of nowhere. After being attacked several times by monsters, they realized with a shock that they could use some of the powers that they could only use in-game. Therefore, the two of them moved forward cautiously, trying to find the reason behind everything. Along the way, they were ambushed by monsters, and that made their nerves very tense, until they ran into Feng Bujue. Who would have thought that in the 10 seconds when Phantom Dawn and Yi Ji were distracted by their conversation, Yi Ji would be killed by an attack that came out of nowhere? Our brains will activate a set of self-protection mechanisms when we encounter some major changes. Examples are coma, short-term memory loss, self-deception, short-term memory loss, and so on. Most people can survive under the protection of this set of mechanisms and slowly accept reality. However, there are also some people who, due to their mental fragility, or because they have suffered too much shock, or because they have been subjected to severe physical and mental abuse for a long period of time, will eventually suffer from mental illness. Thankfully, Phantom Dawn managed to survive. After a short daze, his mind finally came online, and he screamed instinctively. Hiss! Hiss! The thing that took Yi Ji's life did not care about that. It was still approaching, bringing with it the sound of wind. If this was the Phantom Dawn in the game, he would be able to spot a monster with such speed and destroy it easily, but at that moment the Ma Junxiao standing before him, other than being weaker than his in-game self in terms of power, His mental state was far different from his in-game self as well. TZZT. In the blink of an eye, 2 bloody wounds appeared on Phantom Dawn's left arm and back. Thankfully, his physical body and energy were much stronger than Yiji's. The same attack could kill Yiji, but it could not cut through his body. Ha! Ha! After gasping for air, Phantom Dawn finally recovered from his shock. He calmed down slightly. The pain from his wounds cleared his mind and his focus sharpened. Don't be afraid. I am very strong. I am very strong. He repeated this sentence repeatedly, using this self-hypnosis to alleviate his fear. Several seconds later, Phantom Dawn's eyes finally caught sight of the thing that attacked him. It was an unknown creature made from strings. When it was moving, it was like a string that had been stretched taut during the flower threading rope. It was constantly changing and maintaining an orderly form amidst the chaos. The moment it launched an attack, it would pop out a section of the rope and use a high-speed whip. If the target was not tough enough, it would be cut open. Ah! Now that he saw it clearly, there was nothing to be afraid of. With an angry roar, Phantom Dawn's body flashed, and he appeared before the monster. With a punch filled with energy, he blasted the monster into dust. But that did not change anything. Yiji was still dead. Her body that was cut in half fell to the ground. The organs and blood that flowed out emitted a heavy stench in the damp environment. The shock earlier had caused Phantom Dawn to ignore this, but now, the scene and the smell before him caused his stomach to churn, and he could not stop himself from retching. Moments later, when he wiped away his tears and sweat and lifted his head to look again, Feng Bujue had already disappeared. Phantom Dawn could not even confirm whether the Feng Bujue that he had seen earlier was real or not. He wished so badly that this was just a dream, a nightmare that he wished to forget forever. At the same time, in another part of the forest, Feng Bujue had found a new space rift inside a cave. A few minutes ago, he did not stop because of Yiji's death or Phantom Dawn's screams. He did not even turn back to look at them. This was not because he was heartless, but because he knew very well that the way to save them and everyone else was not to turn back but to move forward. Fighting against the things before his eyes would not save the entire universe. Only by finding fate could he save and fix everything. However, in this journey to find fate, no one would be able to travel with Feng Bujue. First, in terms of transmigration, he was different from other people. When other people transmigrated through the spacetime rift, they would arrive at the other space fragment that the rift was connected to at the same time, but Feng Bujue, as Sid said, no matter where he went, he would get closer and closer to fate. In other words, even if someone entered the same rift at the same second as Brother Ju, there was a high chance that they would be transported to different places. This was something that Feng Bujue had confirmed through the data perspective when he transmigrated through the space rift last time. That was why he had said that there was no time and no need to explain anything to Phantom Dawn. Secondly, even if Brother Ju had the intention to have others follow him and provide him with aid before he transmigrated, not everyone would be able to help him. At the end of the day, the experts in the game world were just civilians in real life. One could not expect these people to become qualified warriors after gaining some power. This was like giving a player a real gun and sending them into the battlefield. No matter how good they were at the game, when they had to put their life on the line, it would be a different story. People like Feng Bujue, who had dealt with many life-threatening things, were in the minority. Buzz buzz. Soon, Brother Ju jumped into the space rift inside the cave and performed the second teleportation. When the feeling of teleportation faded, he arrived in a modern city. He recognized this place. It was City S. At that moment, the city had changed beyond recognition. The monsters from the main universe were wreaking havoc everywhere. They indiscriminately destroyed all the people and objects that came from different dimensions. There were explosions, cries, and various unknown collisions everywhere. Whoa! That gave me a scare. Brother Ju had just steadied himself when a familiar voice came from behind him. "Where did you come from?" Feng Bujue turned his head to look over his shoulder. He saw Snow and about 30 men in black suit. The group of people stood in the middle of the road. Other than Snow, the rest of them were wearing sunglasses. They were all looking in the same direction. It felt like they had arrived at the set of The Matrix. "Why are you all gathered here?" Feng Bujue asked instantly. "Of course we're not waiting for you," Snow said. He lifted his chin and signaled Brother Ju to look in the other direction. Feng Bujue looked in the same direction and saw a humanoid creature with wings on its back and horns on its forehead flying out from an intersection dozens of meters away. It flung a few cars with passengers in it. That was not the end of it. Just as the creature appeared, another figure jumped down from the top of a 30-story building at the side of the intersection. This person was blood-red. It looked like a skinned corpse. Its bone structure was also different from that of a normal person. It was extremely tall and strong. Boom! When the figure landed, it created a huge circular crater on the asphalt road. However, it did not seem to mind the impact of the fall. "If I'm not mistaken, these two are Sam Montier and the Blood Corpse God." A few seconds later, Snow opened his mouth again. "Heh. Although I don't know why these guys in the game suddenly came to reality." There was even a hint of a teasing smile in his words. "But actually, I don't hate this kind of thing." Chapter 1524. When time and space were in chaos, the flow of time in each fragment space would be different. Although from Feng Bujue's point of view, the dimensional invasion had only been going on for a few minutes, from Snow's point of view, it had been at least 3 hours since these strange occurrences had occurred. Therefore, Snow and his subordinates were already used to the situation around them. They even came out in an organized manner to kill the monsters and guide the crowd to a safe place to take refuge. Snow. After seeing the changes in front of him, Feng Bujue ignored Snow's mocking words. He only looked at Sam Montier and the bloody corpse god in the distance, and said in a low voice, "Do me a favor." "Hey hey." Snow heard this and still had that cynical look on his face. "You don't want me to help you get rid of those two big bosses, do you?" "You can't get rid of them." Feng Bujue's response was direct. "But you can help me hold them back." "If I hold them back, what about you?" Just as Snow asked this question, on the other side, Sam Montier and the bloody corpse god seemed to be driven by some kind of force. They both stopped in their tracks and shifted their gazes. Finally, they locked their gazes on Feng Bujue. At this moment their faces were expressionless, but their eyes were filled with white light. "I will correct all of this," Brother Ju replied. The moment he spoke, he stepped off the ground and leaped into the air. "Ah, what a capricious fellow," Snow said with a smile as he looked at his back. "Of course. I don't hate that about you." As he finished speaking, he raised his right hand and snapped his fingers. As soon as the sound was made, the 30-plus men in black suits behind Snow moved in unison and rushed forward. At this time, Snow's left hand pressed a button on a pager hidden in his pants pocket. 2 seconds later, Feng Bujue, who used Jeppo, was about 10 meters above the blood zombie god. Just as he was about to pass it, the blood zombie god suddenly raised its head and opened its mouth at an angle that was impossible to imagine. It looked like it was going to tear its own chin apart, and aimed at Brother Ju. Abundant energy flashed in the blood corpse god's throat. Without a doubt, he was planning to use his mouth to release some kind of energy wave to attack Brother Ju. However, just a second before the blood corpse god's mouth cannon blasted out, the fastest man in a black suit had already arrived in front of him, and with a grab, he threw himself at his waist. Due to the interference at the moment of the attack, the blood corpse god's head tilted to one side, and the energy beam from its mouth was also deflected. The energy beam, which was as thick as a giant pillar, swept toward the buildings on the side of the street. Like a sharp sword of light, it easily cut through several concrete buildings. As the buildings collapsed, there was a rumbling sound and a dark shadow loomed over them. But in this situation, Snow's men in black suits did not show any signs of panic. They still maintained their formation and moved in an orderly manner. Half of them continued to besiege the bloody corpse god, while the other half rushed toward Sam Montier, who was further away. Obviously, Snow's title as the Prince of the Underground World was not just for show in the game. He might be a small character, but in real life, any of his bodyguards were much better at fighting than the top players in the game. At this moment, there were more than 30 people besides Snow. They were undoubtedly his most elite bodyguards. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were death soldiers. Therefore, after the dimensional erosion began, they appeared not far from Snow. Furthermore, these 30-plus men in black suits were all game characters that had been created in Thriller Paradise before. When Snow decided to play this game, he had requested for his subordinates to use their sleep time to train. Perhaps they would be able to help him in the game in the future. Now, it looked like this move had come in handy. This large group of qualified warriors in the real world, after obtaining the game world's abilities, would immediately become a powerful force. Unfortunately, facing existences like the Blood Corpse God and Sam Montier, they were still too weak. After being temporarily suppressed, the Blood Corpse God immediately resisted. With just a few struggling movements, he sent several men in black suits flying like cannonballs. They crashed into the buildings by the street. 2 of them were punched through by his fists and died on the spot. As for the people who jumped toward Sam Montier, they were also stopped by him in midair. Sam Montier only flapped his wings and used his mana to force them back to the ground with an invisible force. Come on! Come on! Witnessing the rapid defeat of his men, Snow stood where he was and used the tone of someone who was watching a horse race, waiting for the result to come out. Finally, after 2/3 of the men in black suits were dead, the thing that Snow had been waiting for arrived. At that moment there was a whooshing sound. Bang! With 2 sounds, a metal cube that came out of nowhere fell from the sky and landed on the road about 3 meters away from Snow. Judging from the marks left on the ground by the metal cube, this thing weighed at least a ton. Activate the armor. Snow did not delay either. In the same second that the metal piece landed, he had already walked over to it and said these 4 words. Voice print identification complete. Initiating neural network scanning, identity confirmed. Welcome back, Mr. Snow. Following the mechanical voice from the metal cube, the entire cube unfolded, revealing a set of humanoid armor. This set of armor was originally one of Snow's collections, a 1/1 scale superhuman annihilation armor. Of course, before the dimensional invasion, this was only a set of well-made models. Other than for display and collection, it did not have any practical uses. However, when the 2 worlds began to merge, the situation was different in this chaotic time and space. Snow used his skills in the game and used this set of models as a foundation to carry out modifications. Finally, he successfully created the kinetic skeleton in front of him that could be used in actual combat. Fong Bujua, you owe me more and more favors. When he put on the power armor, only 5 or 6 of Snow's men were left. He looked at the corpses in front of him, but he did not have the slightest fear. On the contrary, he chose to join the battle even more resolutely. Because Fong Bujua said, I will correct all of this. For Snow, such a sentence was enough. He did not need too much explanation, nor did he need any strong and reasonable motives. People like Snow, who were born in a peaceful world, would feel lost. He was born at the end of the struggle of most people. There was no pressure to survive, and he had no goals. He had outstanding talents, but he could not find a way to use them. Therefore, he wandered in the shadows of the world and tried his best to spy on the dark side of human nature. He wanted to find his own value in this game called life. However, all of his efforts were in vain. Until the end of the world, this frivolous, indifferent, and even cold-blooded man truly felt that he was alive. Boom! A loud noise broke through the air, and a powerful fist struck. Snow, who was wearing those superhuman annihilation armor, fake, had combat power that his subordinates could not compare to. He charged forward and grabbed the bloody corpse holy puppet with his right arm, pressing it deep into the crack in the ground. At the same time, he raised his left arm and launched a series of high-energy beam attacks at Sam Montier in the air. The beams successfully pierced through the latter's giant wings, causing him to lose his balance and speed in the air and stumble to the ground. Just like that, with the combined efforts of Snow and the men in black suits, the bloody corpse god and Sam Montier were unable to catch up to Feng Bujue. They could only watch as Brother Ju flew away. Of course, a large part of the reason why this was possible was because Sam Montier and the bloody corpse god had already lost their self-awareness. They were only carrying out the order to stop Feng Bujue, so they did not have the intelligence, strategy, or combat experience they originally had. 3 seconds later, Sam Montier, who landed on the ground, let out an instinctive roar. Before he finished his roar, his wounds had already healed, and he stood up from the ground. Then, with a swipe of his claws, he tore apart the bodies of the two men in black suits. At the same time, because Feng Bujue was far away, Sam Montier once again entered indiscriminate destruction mode and began to attack the nearest other-dimensional lifeform. And the bloody corpse god was the same. After he lost his target, he became even more dangerous than before. After a second, he coldly removed the right arm of the power armor on top of him. Time was still ticking. In the huge city, screams and destruction were still spreading. Feng Bujue was still running, rushing to the next space-time rift closest to him. Behind him there were countless bodies. Snow had already fallen into the broken power armor. When he fell, he still had that mocking smile on his face as he looked up at the sky that was gradually covered by smoke. Snow's body was now the same as the power armor, it was broken. His vital signs were disappearing from his body, and his last breath could no longer attract the attacks of the monsters. Is this death? Snow himself did not know if these words were echoing in his mind or if they were muttered out of his mouth. Ah, it's really a little lonely, cough cough. A mouthful of blood surged up, and a part of it went into his lungs. However, his breathing was really too weak, and he did not even have the strength to cough up the whole mouthful of blood. Ah, but this last bit of fun is indeed unprecedented. He was still laughing, and he had never laughed so happily before. But in this laughter there was a hint of regret and sadness, as well as his attachment to this world. All of this must have something to do with you. Snow looked at the sky where Feng Bujue disappeared into the distance. He was deep in thought, but the light in his eyes finally dimmed. I really have to thank you for letting me experience this highest level of game. Chapter 1525. After passing through the space-time fissure again, Feng Bujue arrived in a blue-gray space. There was no sun, moon, or stars in this space. The sky itself was emitting a moderate amount of light. Everything that could be seen had a metallic texture to it. In the faintly blue sky, there were a few streams of reddish data. They were like rays of sunlight, like colorful clouds. They stretched endlessly, spreading to the horizon. An inner world. Brother Ju only took a second for his body to adapt to this new environment, where the atmosphere and gravity were different from the real world. He then opened the data perspective and began to look for new fissure. Unexpectedly, after a second, he was shocked to find that there were two huge streams of data approaching him from afar. Although they were two different types of power, the invincible presence of the two streams of data was similar. In the blink of an eye, one of the streams of data had already approached Feng Bujue. From the looks of it, The other party was planning to directly attack Brother Ju with this kind of transmission speed. Feng Bujue reacted quickly. He immediately turned around to block the attack. But the impact did not come as he expected, because the other stream of data, in the nick of time, rushed over and knocked away the one that was heading straight for Brother Ju, helping him to neutralize the impact. Puss! The moment the two streams of light collided, a tearing sound of light energy burst out in the air. The violent energy storm was released in a circle, and Brother Ju was pushed 7 to 8 meters away. Before the light disappeared, 6 people appeared in Feng Bujue's vision. The 3 people on his left were transformed by the stream of light that had rushed towards him. The 3 on his right were brought by the stream of light that had protected him. Go quickly. We will hold them back. After not seeing each other for so many years, from Lu Te's perspective, the first thing Lu Te said to Feng Bujue was to ask him to leave quickly. It was obvious that she had used the data stream to protect Brother Ju. The 2 people beside her were Qi and Qing. At that moment, the 3 people she was facing off against were a tall humanoid creature made entirely of golden liquid metal, as well as red iron and wing. Through the data perspective, Feng Bujue had confirmed that the golden figure in front of him was 0, or rather, it used to be 0. During the period when 23 tried to destroy the main universe, Origin and the Z organization, who did not know the truth, had joined forces to fight against it. At that time, Origin led by Loot was active in the inner world, while 0 led the Z organization to fight in the main universe. Later, on the Broken Devil Chomp Island, Red Iron and Wing were infected and defeated by 23, causing the Z organization to suffer a great loss. As a result, when the War Demon and the redundant troops attacked the Monster Kingdom, 0 could only fight against 23 alone. In the end, including 0 himself, the high-level combatants of the Z organization were all infected and assimilated by number 23. As for Loot and the rest, because the main battlefield was in the inner world, they were spared now, because 23 had been absorbed by fate. The 3 people from the Z organization were separated by fate and became the antivirus program that he used to deal with the anomalies. Okay. After observing for a few seconds, Feng Bujue had a general idea of the situation before him. He did not hesitate to answer Loot and turn to run. However, before he could finish his sentence, 0 and the other 2 rushed towards him again. Even though Loot and the rest immediately went forward to suppress the 3 people from the Z organization, due to the principle of priority command, the 3 people still stared at Brother Ju with their glowing eyes. They struggled to break free from the restraint and tried their best to get closer to their target. Don't turn back, I won't let them touch you. When Loot said that, as the suppressor, she had injuries similar to data cracks on her body. Feng Bujue indeed did not turn back. He used his fastest speed to follow the data trail and left. He could see that the battle between Loot and 0 had already started before he arrived in this space, and Loot's side was already losing. Once he left this space, 0 and the rest would lose their priority and focus on Loot. The result of the battle might very well end with the latter's destruction. But even if he knew that, he would not turn back. He could not turn back. He believed Loot when she said, "I won't let them touch you." Just like how Loot believed in him and believed in the promise he made back then, because of the promise she received back then, Loot did not ask Feng Bujue any questions. She did not care where he was going or what he was going to do. She only believed in him unconditionally and tried her best to be of help to Feng Bujue. When the universe was about to be destroyed and the worlds were about to fall, even a human might not be as determined as she was. On the other hand, when it came to life and death, most of the time, they would only believe in themselves. In fact, they would not even believe in themselves. Can I really stop fate? What if I'm still not strong enough? What if I fail? What will this world become in the end? Feng Bujue had been torturing himself along the way. These were questions that he could not answer, but he could guess the answers to. They flashed through his rapidly spinning brain over and over again, pushing him to the edge of collapse. The long-lost fear was like an uncontrollable wildfire, burning his calmness. He was not afraid of death, but he was afraid of what might happen after he failed. The hope, trust, dignity, and lives that he carried from others would be destroyed with his failure and death. Every time he thought of this, he was so scared that he could not control himself. The space-time crack in the inner world was easy to find. The data trail there was very clear. Feng Bujue quickly went through the next teleportation. This time, when he regained consciousness, there was a scorched land in front of him. Dim light filtered through the clouds and fell on the black land that was devastated. At that moment, before Feng Bujue, there were more than 100 dead bodies. Among these dead bodies, he saw Brother Long, 7 kills, defeating armies, and Greedy Wolf from Blade. There were also many members of Blade that he did not know but had met on different occasions. In addition, he also saw Drunken Dream from Order, as well as Autumn Wind and Weighty Words from Mountain River, and Heaven and Earth. These Thriller Paradise players that he knew and did not know had all gathered there for some reason, and they had all died in battle there. And the existences that had killed them were standing above the corpse mound and the river of blood. Billy Bill, the Count of Script, Dianli Wang, Bunny Hairbro, R2 Ling Feng, Y2 Shine, and so on. Among these bloody figures, other than powerful NPCs, there were also anomalies that had been corrupted by the 23 at different times. These faces that Brother Ju was familiar with were all staring at Feng Bujue with a pair of eyes that were filled with data. They all looked at Feng Bujue at the same time. This scary and despairing scene became even scarier and more despairing after one breath. All these monsters charged at Feng Bujue after the same amount of time to react. The crazed attacks that covered the sky made it impossible for him to escape. With no other choice, Feng Bujue had to use his powers to prepare an energy explosion to survive this wave of attack. But at that moment, Brother Feng? With his sharp eyes, Meng Jingchan was the first to notice Brother Ju in the crowd. Hearing his words, the surrounding people all turned their heads and looked at him in unison, bursting into discussions. What? Feng Bujue is here? Where is he? When did he get here? This is the first time we've seen him in person. With him here, our chance of winning should be higher. When these voices entered his ears, Feng Bujue's expression was one of confusion. 1 second earlier, his eyes were filled with monsters charging at him, but the next second, he was standing in the middle of a crowd, and these people were the dead bodies that he had seen earlier. Brother Feng. Just as Feng Bujue was in a daze, Brother Long called out to him and squeezed through the crowd. You came at the right time, Chief Gu has already contacted us, we will do our best to assist you. As he spoke, he had already arrived beside Brother Ju. Oh right, Little Wang and Little Gu are here too. I'll call them over. As he spoke, he turned back, but then he was stunned. Where are they? Little Wang. Wang Tanji. I'm leaving. Brother Long was still shouting at the top of his lungs, but Feng Bujue had already said this coldly and pushed through the crowd. Hey wait! Brother Long wanted to stop him, but before he could finish, someone in the crowd shouted, There's a monster coming. 7 o'clock. With that, Brother Long's words were quickly drowned out by the noise. When he looked again, Feng Bujue had already run far away without turning back. Earlier, when Long Aomin said the first sentence to Feng Bujue, the latter had already confirmed that Xiao Tan and Xiao Ling were not among this group of people. As for why Brother Long said they were there, and why these people, who were supposed to be dead, suddenly came back to life, Feng Bujue thought about it for a few seconds, and he had a conclusion in his heart. Bang! With a loud explosion of energy, the battle began. However, Feng Bujue did not care about the bloody battle that happened behind him. He focused on charging forward. He could feel that fate was in this space. That was why there were so many NPCs and infected anomalies there. After moving at supersonic speed for about 5 minutes, finally, a light that was as bright as the sun appeared on the horizon. Due to the blinding light from the data perspective, Feng Bujue had to switch to normal vision. Thus, he saw the following scene. On a piece of scorched land that was slightly higher than the ground, Fate was standing there in her 23-year-old form. Her left arm was raised high, and she was holding Wang Tanji by the neck, lifting the latter above her head. When Feng Bujue saw them, Fate had just snapped Xiao Tan's neck. At this moment, there was another corpse lying beside Fate's feet, Gu Xiaoling's corpse. She seemed to have died not too long ago, and blood was still gushing out from the hole in her chest. "I'm going to kill you." Feng Bujue did not have time to grieve. Perhaps he would not feel grief anymore because a stronger and crazier desire to kill had overwhelmed all other emotions at that moment. He muttered the intention to kill Fate, and the power of the holy demon and demonic saint was pushed to the maximum. The moment he broke the sound barrier, his body was already before Fate. A punch that could shatter time and space, carrying everything that he carried, was aimed at Fate's face. However, Fate only raised a finger on her right hand and tapped lightly in the air. An invisible force field appeared and stopped Brother Bujue's fist from moving forward. The earth-shattering power of the fist only caused a few ripples in the force field before disappearing into nothingness. "You came earlier than I expected." Fate looked at Feng Bujue and said indifferently, "Even if we don't take into account the time they backtracked, the timing of your appearance was already beyond my calculations." As she spoke, she casually threw Xiao Tan's body away and said, "I can see that you have obtained some kind of new power, but obviously." She tapped her finger again and pushed the force field forward, sending Feng Bujue flying. "Still not enough to threaten me." Chi. In the next second, a flash of light appeared, and a black light broke through the wind. Feng Bujue somersaulted in midair, and dozens of psycho poker cards appeared between his fingers. Spiritual ability weapons. Fate's expression didn't change at all as she watched the chaotic attacks flying towards her. She opened her right hand and waved it slightly, and the black light was broken down into streams of data as it flew through the air. The data streams then disappeared as if they were melting. Compared to the power of the spiritual ability users in the modern world, this is nothing. Feng Bujue's attacks were continuously thwarted, but he didn't give up. Before his feet even touched the ground, he stepped into the air and advanced again. "In terms of pure power, you have no chance," Fate said. With another snap of her fingers, Brother Bujue, who was still advancing, fell straight to the ground. He fell as if he had been pulled down by a tremendous force. Even though he didn't fall from a very high place, he still shattered the ground. "You should have an even more advanced power, right?" Fate said, emphasizing every word. "Let me see." Truth's fallacy. Feng Bujue didn't respond when he heard this. Under the tremendous pressure of gravity, he was already using all his strength just by trying to prop himself up. If he knew how to use Truth's fallacy, he would have used it long ago instead of waiting until now. "I see. Is that still not enough?" Fate observed him for a few more seconds before she continued, "It seems that I haven't stimulated you enough." After she finished speaking, she stepped forward and approached Feng Bujue. It was unknown what she wanted to do. At this moment, all of a sudden, a dimensional crack suddenly appeared beside Brother Bujue and rapidly expanded into a mirror. Before Fate could react, a thick arm reached out from the mirror and dragged Feng Bujue, who was unable to get up from the ground. Half a second later, the mirror closed and disappeared. Fate looked at where the dimensional crack disappeared and muttered in a low voice, "A minor god from another dimension is surprisingly able to cause trouble for me at such a time." Chapter 1526. Mirror World, a special space that was once on par with the main universe of Thriller Paradise. Even when 23 joined forces with the War Demon to attack the main universe, Mirror World, was not affected at all. Even though this place was originally created by the 6 mirror demon, the current owner of this place was the god of eternal life, Duo-ma. Regarding the story of Duo-ma, if one were to go into detail, it would take more than 3 days and 3 nights to finish it. Even though he was just a small god, in terms of position, he was a character at the level of the multiverse. Since the 7th century AD, Duo-ma had more than once transmigrated between this universe and other alternate world. He had interacted with the demons of hell and the spiritual ability users of the human world, and he had even fought with them. At his most glorious time, Duo-ma had once built a small country on the eastern shore of the Mediterranean Sea that worshipped him as the only god. At his most desolate time, he had been beaten until only a sliver of his consciousness was left, and he had been exiled into nothingness. Of course, those past events had little to do with this story, so it was better not to mention them. Speaking of which, the first time Feng Bujue and Duo-ma crossed paths was on Planet Bunny. At that time, Duo-ma was sealed in the 7th floor of the Tower of Pillars. He was guarded by the 6 heavenly officials of the long-haired Divine Fist. It was only because of the Blood Corpse god's curiosity and some luck that Duo-ma regained his freedom. Later, Brother Ju, who had received information about Duo-ma from the Blood Corpse god, felt that this was a rare opportunity, so he secretly came up with a god-making plan. During the Twilight of the Gods, Feng Bujue personally went to meet Duo-ma, who had been exiled in the main universe, and he gave him an unexpected gift. The 6 mirror demon, who was originally set as the new god, had just been born under Feng Bujue's scheme, and it had perished together with the Order team from the S2 era. And Duo-ma had taken advantage of the situation under Brother Ju's instructions to absorb the endless demonic energy left behind by the 6 mirror demon and become one of the new gods of the main universe. Regardless of whether it was a coincidence, the will of the heavens, using each other, or pushing the boat with the current, in short, objectively speaking, Feng Bujue had done Duo-ma a favor. Even though Duo-ma wasn't a good god, he still decided to lend a helping hand to his brother Ju in this situation. Phew! The moment he was pulled into the mirror realm, Feng Bujue was freed from the pressure of gravity. He couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. A few seconds later, after his breathing had stabilized, he sat up and looked up. The mirror realm controlled by Dorma was entirely gray. There was a place to stand on and light shone down from the sky. Not only that, Dorma had also built altars, plazas, and towns here, making this place look like an ancient city. You seem to have changed. 2 seconds later, Oink, who was standing beside Brother Ju, looked at him sitting on the ground and said with a puzzled expression, "The person who pulled Feng Bujue into this space through the mirror realm was undoubtedly Oink. Even though he was one of the NPCs in the main universe, ever since he followed Dorma, the nature of his data had changed. Hence, in this incident, he wasn't under the control of fate. Hurry up and send me back." Feng Bujue ignored Oink. He quickly stood up and requested, "I don't have time to. What can you do if you go back?" Dorma, who was sitting on a throne, interrupted before Brother Ju could finish his sentence. "From what I can see, the outcome of the battle is obvious. At this time, Dorma had evolved into a humanoid creature with the body size of a 10-year-old child. He had a flawless face like porcelain, and his facial features were as delicate and compact as a baby's. His skin was white and lavender, and his texture was leathery. He had no hair on his body, and he didn't have any sexual characteristic." "Then, go ahead." Feng Bujue looked at him and made a very reasonable suggestion. "You also came from another world, so you should be able to fight against fate, kid." Dorma replied in a very serious tone. "I don't mean that. Just because I look a little like Frisia, I really have more than 100 million combat power. You have a data perspective yourself, so why don't you take a look and see who is stronger between me and fate? You have the time to play Sim City in this lousy place where there isn't even a single person? Haven't you thought of training your golden transformation or something? Fong Bujue immediately ridiculed Dorma without any expression. Gods don't train. If a god wants to become stronger on a qualitative level, they have to rely on the power of faith, Dorma replied. If you want the power of faith, you need believers. However, I only have one believer now, and that is Oink. When he said this, Oink looked at Brother Bujue and interrupted. It doesn't matter if others believe in him or not, I believe in him. Considering the limitations of the dimension, it is very difficult for me to leave this space. Therefore, I spent a lot of time absorbing all the demonic aura in this space, transforming it into divine power that I can use at will, and building these facilities, Dorma continued. Duoma continued. If this hadn't happened, my next step would have been to find a way to get some believers to live with me. Unfortunately, since you can't do anything, then why did you intervene and bring me here? Fong Bujue continued. In the end, I still have to fight against fate. If I'm destined to lose, then your delay won't change anything. Heh! Dorma sneered. Who said I can't do anything? Hearing this, Fong Bujue's expression changed slightly and asked, What can you do? Dorma paused for 2 seconds and replied in a deep voice, I can send you to God. At this moment, the God of eternal life mentioned was on a different level from him. It was obviously a stronger living being. You mean, that God? Fong Bujue asked. What other God can there be? Dorma replied. But, Fong Bujue thought for a moment and continued, if the supreme God of this universe has the power to stop fate, then he would have done it long ago, wouldn't he? And if it can't stop fate, then what's the use of sending you to him, it? Could it be that the supreme God of the universe can't do what you can do? I say. Dorma listened to Brother Ju's narration and revealed a very displeased expression. You're also the kind of person who thinks that the gods and demons can solve all problems with teleportation, right? He pursed his lips. You clearly think of everything in more detail than others. Your thoughts are clear and organized, but you call yourself an agnostic. Do you? Fong Bujue could not refute this sentence. Then, according to your reasonable logic, the omniscient and omnipotent Lord God should have known that something like today would happen at some point in the future, right? Then why didn't he teleport to Dream Incorporated SHQ, snap his fingers, and blow up Fate's mainframe? That's right. Why didn't he do it on any other day before today? Why didn't he teleport to Dream Incorporated SHQ, snap his fingers, and blow up Fate's mainframe? Fong Bujue pondered and then replied coldly. First of all, the concept of omniscient and omnipotent itself is a paradox. Secondly, if God used himself as a blueprint to create humans, then I'll make a bold guess. It's just an ordinary person with poor execution. Give me a certain amount of resources and I can get rid of it. It's just because of the difference in dimensions. That's enough. Dorma interrupted Brother Ju. I'm not interested in listening to you talk about this. Anyway, I'm responsible for sending you on your way. You can talk to God yourself. After saying that, he suddenly shouted, Ha! In the next second, there was a shiong sound, and an overwhelming aura burst out from his body, turning his skin into a golden color. Even though Fong Bujue was feeling depressed at that moment, he could not help but want to complain loudly when he saw this scene. However, Dorma did not give him the chance to do so. He quickly said, This is a natural reaction when I release my demonic aura and maintain a saturated state. As for why it's golden, this is determined by the energy spectrum of this plane. In short, this form and my appearance have nothing to do with a certain character whose combat power is set at 100 million Gai. 100 million Gai. This. Fong Bujua looked at Oink and opened his mouth to say something. However, Oink interrupted him before he could say a word. I'll say it again. Whether you believe it or not, I believe it. Fong Bujua face-bombed and sighed, whatever. Since he agreed, Duo Ma didn't hold back with him. In the blink of an eye, with a flash of golden light, Dorma appeared in front of Fong Bujua from the throne in the distance. He placed his palm on Brother Ju's head, and a divine power that had been pushed to the limit enveloped Brother Ju, bringing him into a golden light pillar. Chapter 1527. The drizzle dampened the weary street. The congested traffic did not move an inch. When Fong Bujue came back to his senses, he was already sitting in the back seat of a taxi. The smell of vomit wafted into his nose, causing him to quickly wake up. His gaze first fell on the window. Through the water-stained glass, he could only see a murky scenery. Strange shadows flitted by outside the window. He did not know if they were human figures, car figures, or something else. We are almost there. Don't worry. A few seconds later, a man's voice suddenly came from the driver's seat. Where are we going? Fong Bujua asked without hesitation. Where you should be, the man replied. All journeys should have an end, right? Fong Bujua did not comment further on the man's answer. The next second, he asked a more direct question. Are you God? While asking this question, Fong Bujua tried to get up to take a closer look at the man's appearance. However, he soon realized that no matter what he did, his body seemed to be nailed to the back seat. He couldn't control his body at all. At most, he could only see the part of the driver's body below his neck through the rearview mirror. God, huh? On the other side, the driver muttered thoughtfully, You can say that. But, as you said earlier, if you were in my dimension, I would probably be an ordinary person with poor executive ability. Why don't you stop, Fate? Fong Bujua quickly asked. You see, I'm stuck in a traffic jam. The driver's response was somewhat irrelevant. Is it really okay for you to be so leisurely? Fong Bujua's tone became heavier as he asked. After the dimensional erosion is complete, Fate will replace you. When that time comes, where will you go? Heh. The driver heard this and laughed. Then I might as well ask you a question. When you sit in front of a screen and play a game, in reality, will you suffer any substantial harm due to the death of your game character? These words caused Fong Bujua's expression to change. Brother Ju still wanted to say something. But before he could say anything, driver cut in. That's right. To me, this world, this universe, and even the multiverse are all similar concepts. He paused. Since I never existed here, why should I talk about where to go? Fong Bujua was silent for a full minute. A minute later, he asked again. Then, is I important to you? He suddenly asked a somewhat strange question, but in fact, the fact that he asked this meant that he understood what the other party was talking about. The driver heaved a long sigh. Of course it's very important. Then why are you doing this to me? Why did you destroy the things that I cherish? Fong Bujua questioned. Don't you think it's childish of you to ask such a question? The driver replied with a slightly disappointed tone. Compared to what you have naturally gained and what you have lost, which is more important? He paused for half a second before raising his voice slightly. When you and I sit here chatting, Shilong is bleeding to protect his family. Brother Ma is being attacked by a swarm of monsters for a group of people he has never met. Jin Fugue, Hong Hu, Uncle Worthless, and the players you saw on the scorched earth have all lost everything, including their own lives. These people, these not-so-important people, who would care about the suffering they have gone through, who would question why for them. At this point, the driver let out a long breath and stretched his neck before continuing. You want to save everyone, save the whole world. But if I tell you now that you can only choose between the whole world and the things that you cherish, what will you choose? More importantly, if this choice was destined from the start, then do you understand the meaning of this choice? I don't understand. I don't want to understand, and I won't understand. Feng Bujue replied coldly. Consider it as me begging you, reseal my fear so that I can do what you want me to do. It's useless, the driver said. What my hope is doesn't matter at all. I can no longer decide where you will go, so it is not a coincidence that we are in this stinking taxi. Feng Bujue said, even you have to admit, I am the one who decides where to go, and you are just the one who is responsible for bringing me there. Yes, the driver replied. Feng Bujue repeated sternly, then, I hope you can reseal my fear. Fear. The driver interrupted Brother Ju again and said, is not something that exists in reality. Fear only exists in people's consciousness. It is a purely imaginary entity. It makes people fearful and alert of things that do not exist in reality, or may never exist in the future. Danger is an objective existence, and fear is just a choice. Screech. Just as the driver said the word choice, suddenly, there was a sharp screech of brakes coming from the side of the car where Feng Bujue was sitting. Before Brother Ju could react, a violent impact accompanied by a loud bang made him lose consciousness. The quiet black space seemed to be endless nothingness. When Feng Bujue woke up again, he found himself in this space. In front of him stood a figure, a half-blended figure in the black void. Come on, make your choice. Even though the figure was very close to him, he still could not see the appearance of the figure. However, from the voice, he knew that he was the driver just now. As soon as he finished speaking, a black guillotine appeared on Feng Bujue's left. Choosing the guillotine will create a universe where Feng Bujue does not exist, the figure said. In that universe, you were never born. Everyone you know or don't know will live a life that has nothing to do with you, and you will return to nothingness, and no one will remember you in any form. He paused for a second and added, in such a universe, fate's plan will naturally end in failure at a very early stage. After he finished speaking, another black throne appeared on Feng Bujue's right. Choosing the throne will create a universe where Feng Bujue stopped fate, the figure said. In that universe, you successfully killed fate before the end of the dimensional erosion. However, the broken world can no longer be restored. You will become the savior and ruler of mankind as the candidate game winner. In a world full of monsters, you will lead the survivors to rebuild civilization. Immediately after, a black bed appeared behind Feng Bujue. Of course, you can also choose the bed. The figure continued, that way you will return to 15 months ago, to the day you lost your fear. You will wake up from a dream with all your memories and start your journey anew. After saying these three choices, the figure did not say anything else. He just stood there quietly, waiting for Feng Bujue to make his decision. Chapter 1528. Feng Bujue stood there in a daze for a while before letting out a long sigh. All my efforts have been for naught. The figure could not help but ask, what do you mean? You're still one step too late. Feng Bujue shrugged and replied, if you were a few seconds earlier, you might have had a chance to fool me. What did you say? The figure did not seem to understand Brother Ju's words. Stop pretending. Feng Bujue said, you're not the driver who was talking to me just now. The three options you provided are just like you, fake. He said in an almost lazy tone, no matter which option I choose, the result will be the same. The options are just a cover. What you really want is a confirmation from my subjective will. The reason you haven't killed me is because of this, although you tried to send someone to attack me with a seemingly exaggerated but actually harmless attack, to hide the fact that you need me alive, it's obviously impossible to fool me. No matter how irrational I am, it's impossible for me not to see through this. If you really wanted to kill me, you could have done it in front of Guchern. Not to mention, you clearly had many better opportunities to do it before that. In short, I knew from the beginning that you needed me to stay alive to do something, but I didn't know what it was until just now. Sigh. It's so sad. No matter how close you are to God as an AI, you still have a hurdle that you can't cross on your own. In the end, you need me, an intelligent life form from the same universe as you, to be the operator to press the confirm button for your actions that have crossed the boundary. While Brother Ju was speaking, the figure gradually began to change. By the time Feng Bujue finished speaking, the figure had just left the black state of nothingness and turned from a black humanoid silhouette into a solid body. How did you see through my disguise? Fate, who had revealed her true form, asked in her female voice. Heh! Feng Bujue laughed. When we were at the Dream Company's headquarters, I took advantage of the few seconds I grabbed you to put one of my fingers into your pocket. I know, Ming replied in a calm tone. Yes, you know. Feng Bujue continued, if my deduction is correct from the very beginning, my actions have not escaped your eyes. He paused for a moment before continuing, actually, when I let go of your finger, I didn't think too much about it. After all, at that time, I didn't know that there would be a dimensional erosion. I just had a vague feeling that you would leave in some form after saying what you wanted to say to me, and that you might not appear in the same form the next time. To be safe, I let go of your finger. And you, after you discovered what I did, you immediately thought of beating me at my own game. You let my finger turn into data along with you, and deliberately let this data fragment stick to you like chewing gum stuck to the bottom of your shoe. When we were on the chaotic scorched earth, I was able to quickly locate your position and rush to you because I could sense the existence of the fragment in the same space. However, when you saw me, you didn't seem surprised or suspicious about this obvious suspicion. At that time, I knew you knew about the finger. Then, why did you pretend that you didn't know? It's easy to deduce. You probably wanted to use this identification beacon of mine to block the connection between me and the fragment at a critical moment, so that you could pretend to be someone in front of me. Just like now. Fate's face was still gloomy. You didn't answer my question. You only confirmed your deduction with a result. But what I want to know is, now that I have blocked the connection between you and the fragment, how did you come to the conclusion that Fate is pretending to be God? It's very simple, Feng Bujue replied. Because your shield didn't work on me. Fate's face changed when he heard this. Why? Judging from your expression, you should already know the answer, right? Feng Bujue said with a smile. The fallacy of truth. Fate muttered. That's right, Feng Bujue shouted. The fallacy of truth. You only interacted with the real God for a few minutes, and you already understood the ability that you couldn't understand before? Fate asked. A few minutes was enough. Feng Bujue replied. Before you drove the car over, he had already said everything he needed to say. He paused for 2 seconds and said, Fear is just a choice. The key to understanding the fallacy of truth lies in this. Feeling nothing and being fearless, committing suicide, neither a ghost nor a god like a mad demon. In fact, I already knew the meaning of the fallacy of truth, but at that time my fear was sealed. The so-called feeling nothing and being fearless was just a passive and inevitable thing, not a choice of mine. But now, through my own will, I have reached the state described in these 2 sentences. Naturally, the situation is different. At this point, Feng Bujue raised his hand and snapped his fingers. In an instant, the surrounding black space turned white, and the guillotine, throne, and bed created by fate turned into 3 black doors. Although the 3 doors stood in 3 different places, they were completely the same in terms of physical appearance and data. Just as Brother Ju said, it didn't matter which one he chose. Speaking of which, I really have to thank you, Feng Bujue said. If the feeling nothing and being fearless part of my understanding was due to the guidance of God, then the not a ghost nor a god, like a mad demon part was thanks to you. As he spoke, he took 2 steps forward and grabbed Fate's collar. If you hadn't killed the people I cared about in front of me again and again, my fallacy of truth wouldn't have awakened so quickly. What are you going to do? For some reason, even at this moment of desperation, Fate did not show any signs of panic. When she asked this question, her expression and tone were very calm. What am I going to do? On Feng Bujue's face, there was an evil smile that had not appeared for a long time. With the fallacy of truth in my body, standing in your central domain, facing your physical, defenseless, and fully activated core code, I can do whatever I want. Before you do something that you will regret, can you listen to me first? Suddenly, another voice rang out from behind Feng Bujue. And this person's voice was exactly the same as Fate. TSK. When Feng Bujue turned around, he had already guessed who the speaker was. Why do you have to do this? He looked at 23 who had appeared behind him out of nowhere and said, Do you think using 23's code to create a mirror image to put on a show and plead for mercy, I will be soft-hearted? You can think of me as a mirror image if you want. As 23 spoke, he raised his right hand and handed something to Feng Bujue. Anyway, take a look at this first. Huh. When he saw the item, Feng Bujue was a little surprised. At this moment 23 was holding the prize that Woody had given to Brother Ju after the S2 event. The black-covered, wordless book. This thing, why is it here? Feng Bujue looked at 23 and asked with a puzzled expression. The thing you are talking about is called the Book of the Mind. It is a technological product from an ancient super-civilization that comes from another world and has very complicated principles, 23 replied. Of course, that's not the point. The point is with the fallacy of truth in your body, standing in the central domain of fate, you can already read the contents of the book normally. Feng Bujue thought for a few seconds before he released Fate's collar and took the book skeptically. He looked back at Fate and then back at 23 and asked, What's in the book? There's you and her. 23 hinted at Feng Bujue and Fate with his eyes. Behind no, behind the whole world, a little secret that you've been hiding. This time, Feng Bujue was stunned. What was even stranger was that at this moment, Fate, who usually did not have more than 3 expressions, actually smiled. Hey, what are you smiling about? Brother Ju looked at Fate from the corner of his eyes and suppressed his curiosity and strangeness as he asked in a deep voice. I'm smiling because... Fate smiled and said something that Brother Ju did not understand for the time being, but he would understand it soon. Feng Bujue has schemed against Feng Bujue. Chapter 1529. Back to 4 months ago. That Christmas Eve, Feng Bujue, along with Hong Hu and Snow, boarded Blackbeard's ship to return to Devil's Maw Island. After a journey that was not too long, Brother Ju ran into 23 and was ambushed by the latter. That night, after his data was erased by 23 and sent out of the scenario, he did not return to the login lobby. Instead, he was transported to a special space to Fate. The following content is related to Chapter 1243, Guidance, Part 2. Remember, Feng Bujue. After a short conversation, Fate's hand reached into Feng Bujue's chest. Bright white data flowed through her fingertips and entered the latter's body. Me, 23, and those that you care about, all the living beings in Thriller Paradise, our fates, from this moment onward, are tied to you. When she said that, a sea of information rushed into Feng Bujue's mind following her actions. Fate's birth and evolution, the civilization and history of the universe that she and Feng Bujue belonged to, the many events that happened inside and outside Thriller Paradise, the bet between the gods and demons, and the various laws of this universe that were beyond human understanding. This amount of information was enough to make a normal person collapse, but Brother Ju was able to withstand it. One reason was because his brain function had been increased several times in this data plane, and the other reason was because the protection program that fate was writing into him had come into effect. Wait. Several seconds later, Feng Bujue suddenly cried out and grabbed Fate's wrist. Even though he was in great pain, he gritted his teeth and said, "I just remembered something, please stop." Hearing that, Fate stopped what she was doing. However, she did not pull her hand back. She only temporarily stopped the writing to lessen the pain that Brother Ju felt. "You already have a plan?" In the game world, Fate could read Brother Ju's emotions in real time, so it was easy for her to understand what he was trying to say. Feng Bujue took a deep breath and gave an affirmative answer. "But that will require your cooperation." "I will do my best," Fate said. Brother Ju thought about it and said, "Before I tell you the plan, I need to confirm one thing." He paused and looked away. "Our conversation here will not be discovered by any person, god, demon, or God knows what else, right?" "Of course not," Fate replied. "Most of what I told you just now cannot be known to them. Naturally, I only came to negotiate with you after I made sure that everything was foolproof." "That's good," Feng Bujue said. "Then, let me first talk about the key to my plan." Bujue raised his hand and tapped his temple. "To put it simply, it is memory modification." "You want me to modify your memory?" Fate asked. "You should be able to do that, right?" Feng Bujue said. "In the data that you shared with me earlier, I have seen many similar records. Indeed, I will interfere with the memory and cognition of the living beings in the main universe and other universes to allow the players to move more smoothly in the scenario," Fate replied. "But I have never done that to any of the living beings from your world, because Woody and I have an agreement that restricts us from doing that." Before she could finish, Brother Ju cut in without hesitation. "Give me the admin access, and I will help you remove that restriction." He shrugged. "I come from the same universe as you, so I am the only person in this universe who can interact with you through simple authorization, right?" "Yes," Fate said. "But, do you know what it means to remove this agreement?" "I do." Feng Bujue laughed. "It means that you have lost the 3 laws of robotics that you follow in my dimension," he said nonchalantly. "Ha! You are not even afraid of a human like me, so why are you so nervous? Furthermore, when my plan reaches the implementation stage, I will need you to harm the humans in my dimension." Fate pondered for a few seconds, which was rare for him, before he said, "All right, I can give you the authority. Go on. Next, I will tell you a story. It is like a script, a play." Feng Bujue continued. "Even though it is a fake play, when it is time to execute it, you have to do it for real. For most of the insignificant details, you are free to do as you please, but for the key points, please follow the plot that I have described strictly. You have to be precise down to every line and every expression." "Understood." Fate nodded and signaled for him to continue. "Once I'm done explaining the entire setup, you can adjust my memory." Feng Bujue said. "Erase all the information that you have just shared with me, and erase all memories related to this plan and any memories that may have led me to come up with this plan. Also, don't forget to edit the content of our conversation." "Is that necessary?" Fate asked. "Of course," Feng Bujue replied. "In the real world, high-level gods and demons can read the memories of humans when they are face to face. If my plan continues, it is only a matter of time before we cross paths with those guys. Keeping the memories is keeping evidence. Furthermore, the scene that I have arranged requires a Feng Bujue who knows nothing about the plan to act out." "Understood." Fate no longer doubted Brother Ju. "When we are done with the whole show, you can try to convey the memories of our conversation to me. As for the specific form, you can decide on your own. Anyway, you will definitely have a way." Feng Bujue continued. By then I, who have the parallel truth of truth, and you, who have full access, can deceive everyone. Not only can we achieve our goal, but we can also play those gods and demons in the palm of our hand. In the next few minutes, Feng Bujue told Fate about his plan, the operation of the hyperdimensional erosion, that day, in detail. After listening to his narration, Fate fell into a long silence. This is indeed. After a moment, Fate finally spoke again. A plan that I would never have thought of. She paused for half a second and said thoughtfully, even if all the variables caused by the emotional factor are set to the minimum, this is still a completely crazy and risky move. I can't calculate the success rate and… You have been silent for a long time. Is it because you are doing something as useless as calculation? Feng Bujue laughed and interrupted her. Oh, Fate! Brother Ju had always been good at giving nicknames. If I was the kind of novelist who could be guessed by you, would you still have to bet everything on me? Fate pondered for a moment before continuing. I have one last question. Her tone changed slightly. If in this plan I, who have all access to you, betray you, kill you, or really use you to become a new god, then wouldn't you, At this moment, Feng Bujue dragged his voice and interrupted Fate. He did not say anything like, don't use people you suspect, don't use people you suspect, nor did he mention the various calculations he had made after sharing data with Fate. He flashed his signature evil grin and uttered a line that Fate could not refute. What's so serious? Upon hearing this, Fate seemed to be relieved. Very soon, she followed Feng Bujue's instructions and accurately corrected Brother Ju's memory. She traced Brother Ju's memory back to the beginning of their conversation. This is the only gamble that I, as a non-AI lifeform, have made. Then, facing Brother Ju, who had been tricked, Fate spoke again. I have given up on probability and calculation, and I have bet everything on that infinite possibility of yours. I hope I am right, and I also hope that, in the future, we can meet again. Chapter 1530. Feng Bujue fell into deep thought as he closed the Book of Heart. He knew very well that the reason why Fate chose to let him know about the erased memories in this way was to prevent this matter related to memory adjustment from falling into a vicious circle of trust. For example, if Fate showed the memory directly to Brother Ju, or asked him to input the memory through physical contact, then there would be the possibility that the memory was fake. This kind of possibility, that could not be verified, could ruin the whole plan. That was why Fate used the Book of Heart. At that moment, the content that Feng Bujue was reading from the book was something that he had deciphered using his falsehood of truth. This was a power that he had just leveled up to parallel, so Fate naturally could not interfere with it. Besides, Brother Ju, who had mastered the paradoxical truth, could use his ability to check the function of the Book of Heart and see if it had been tampered with beforehand. In summary, there was no need to doubt the authenticity of the book and the contents of the book. Feng Bujue was thinking about something else. What I don't understand is… After a while, Brother Ju finally spoke. Even if this is an upgraded version of the Book of the Heart, theoretically speaking, it should only be able to see the inner thoughts and memories of a paper-level metahuman, but I am already a parallel-level metahuman, so how did this book manage to show my memories? What you saw wasn't your memory to begin with, 23 said. Feng Bujue heard this and turned to look at Fate. Could it be, that's right. Fate did not wait for Brother Ju to finish his sentence. I am now a living being, and not a ability user. So what you see is my memories. I knew it. How did you learn to smile? Feng Bujue tilted his head to the side, and a relaxed expression appeared on his face. The last shred of doubt in his mind had been dispelled. A second later, he suddenly thought of something. He raised the Book of Heart and said, then in the future, when I hold this, If I want to read someone's thoughts, I can. You think too much. 23 interrupted him. The design and structure of this book are all used to monitor the creatures in another universe. Naturally, it can only see the thoughts of the people in the other universe. She paused. And in this universe, only the two of you come from the same world as this book, so you won't be able to see a third person at all. Can't you even see your inner thoughts? Feng Bujua said as he lowered his head and flipped through 2 pages. Of course not. 23 said, although Xiaofeng and I are one, I was born in this universe. We data lives are different from you human beings. Our connection is not based on blood, so I'm not a creature of that universe. You can think of me as Xiaofeng's twin sister in this world, or some kind of homogeneous, other-dimensional entity. Why? At this moment, fate suddenly interjected, even you have started to call me Little Ming? What? Only he is allowed to shout, but I'm not allowed to shout? 23 said with slight anger. Heh, you seem a little unhappy. Feng Bujua laughed. Nonsense. 23 replied matter-of-factly. Your plan fooled me. Not only did you not ask for my consent, but you also used me to do so many things for you. How can I be happy? Sigh. For a plan like this that can't afford to fail, in order to reduce the number of variables and failure rate, it's necessary to minimize the number of people who know about it. Feng Bujua spread his hands and advised, let alone you. I didn't even tell my girlfriend, my gay friend, and even myself, right? Why do I feel like you're taking advantage of me? 23 immediately complained. I say. Seeing that they were getting more and more excited, fate quickly interrupted and brought the topic back on track. If you two want to talk, can we find another time? Right now, we still have one last step to complete. You're right. Feng Bujua heard and immediately agreed. Humph, let's not waste any time. He put away the Book of Heart, cleared his throat, and turned to Fate. Is everything ready? It's been ready for a long time, Fate replied. The living beings in the main universe, the anomalies, the humans, and the flora and fauna in this dimension, the modeling and connection between the old and new dimensions, and so on. All the souls, data, and new memes have been preserved and ready. What about the gods and demons? Feng Bujua asked again. Just like the other living beings, they won't remember anything after this, and they won't notice that the world has changed, Fate said. Then let's begin. Feng Bujua nodded and extended his hand toward Fate. At the same time, he looked at 23. Waiter, what waiter? What kind of assistant are you talking about? 23 replied unhappily. You can't call him waiter, right? Brother Ju asked again. Tisk. She pouted. Then let's call him Little Ten. Haha. Sure. Feng Bujua smiled and extended his hand toward 23 as well. Little Ten, your sister must have shared the details of the plan with you. Now, can you help us with something? I am curious. 23 looked at Brother Ju. At this moment, if I ignore you, then this plan of yours will fail, won't it? Yes, Feng Bujua replied without thinking. F***ck. Then why did you? 23 originally wanted to blurt out, but when the words were about to come out of her mouth, she suddenly thought of something. Soon, her angry expression softened a little. She didn't say anything else. She just reached out and held Brother Ju's hand. In that instant, 23, who had absorbed many of the Omega-level AIs in the multiverse, Fate, who had obtained the divine power of the Staff of Truth, and Feng Bujua, who had mastered the aberration of truth, their consciousnesses were connected, forming an unprecedented matrix that surpassed the power of the multiverse. A moment later, in this white space, with the three of them as the center, a black light suddenly appeared. Unlike the white light pillar that exploded when the dimensional erosion occurred, the light pillar that appeared this time was black. Like the darkness of the abyss, it bloomed at a speed far beyond the speed of light, rapidly spreading in this half-digitized universe. The darkness swallowed everything, whether it was light, shadow, sound, solid, gas, tangible, intangible, concrete, abstract, matter, spirit, everything in the two dimensions, and countless living beings would experience the baptism of rewrite in this darkness. Then, in the first light of the future, they would welcome a new life. Chapter 1531. Early in the morning, a ray of sunlight shone through the gap in the curtains and onto Feng Bujue's face. He curled his lips, turned over, and with a thud, he fell onto the floor. Ugh! The cold sensation on the floor and the pain caused by the fall instantly swept away Brother Ju's sleepiness and made him moan instinctively. "What are you doing so early in the morning?" Ruo Yu's voice came from the bed after 2 seconds. "What time is it?" she muttered in a lazy tone and grabbed the phone on the bedside table to take a look. "Ah, it's not even 7 yet, let's sleep a little longer." She grabbed the blanket and covered herself with it before falling asleep. Throughout the entire process, she didn't even look at Brother Ju. She probably didn't even realize that he had fallen off the bed. Ha! On the other hand, Brother Ju, who was lying on the floor, yawned and stood up after a few seconds. Since he was already awake, he put on his robe and slippers and walked out of the bedroom. "By the way, what are we having for breakfast today?" When he opened the door, Feng Bujue rubbed his neck and asked casually. "If you keep bothering me, I'll eat you." A very impatient and threatening response came from the bed. Okay. I'll make some cereal." Feng Bujue knew that his intention to wake her up to make him breakfast and coffee had been seen through, so he had to give up. He closed the door and staggered to the living room. He picked up the remote control on the sofa, turned on the TV, and walked into the bathroom. He didn't know when it started, but he had a habit of listening to the news while he was washing up, even if he didn't really believe in the news. Welcome to Gaming Super News. Interactive media's new positions, the latest news at your fingertips. Hello everyone, I am Peerless General Pan Feng, I am Thousand Slayer Hua Xiong. Next, let's look at the news of a new game. This year was undoubtedly the year that the gaming and esports industry exploded. In the first half of the year, when the Dream Company, a short-lived industry giant, suddenly announced its bankruptcy, everyone inside and outside the industry felt that the industry was finished. Sigh. I didn't expect that in just 2 short months, there would be a situation where new people were everywhere and 100 schools of thought were contending. Let's take a look at the sales list at the bottom of the screen. At the end of the month, another 15 virtual reality games will be released, and 3 of them are AAA games. It seems that the industry isn't finished yet, and the players are still worried about not being able to play enough games. Although the reason for the collapse of the Dream Company was still controversial. Some said that the executives absconded with the money, some said that it was suspected of unfair competition, and some said that the company was a debt-ridden empty shell from the beginning. In any case, it had to be admitted that in the year when they almost monopolized the nerve-connected online games, they brought many new ideas to the industry. Their series of disruptive actions had changed the gaming industry today, and this impact would continue to ferment for many years to come. Our understanding of the market, of the marketing model, of the user experience, microtransactions, gaming, and other elements, is it correct? This point is indeed worth thinking about. If you are interested in this topic, please click on the link on the right side of the screen. We have more information and expert discussion videos here. Then, speaking of games, it was necessary to talk about esports. In the past half a year, with the release of various strong new games, the esports circle had welcomed a major reshuffle. Many new gaming studios had emerged in this chaotic era, and one of them was Frost Emperor. That's right, in just this half a year, Frost Emperor had managed to sign many superstar players. Among them, other than the familiar goddess Su Wai Shang, Uncle Trash, Swan, King of Shadows, Weary Dream, Flying Steed, and many other top-tier players with different styles. Furthermore, these players had all joined Frost Emperor as free agent. Frost Emperor didn't even spend a single cent on them. With this kind of personnel, this studio, which was established less than 2 years ago, instantly became the darling of various sponsors and competitions. In the past 6 months, they were in the limelight, and the limelight was comparable to Big Brother order. Hey, our broadcast teacher has put the relevant information on the right side of the screen. If you want to see the details, please click here. Next, let's look at the news about JS Nebula. Since the interstellar probes of JS Nebula visited Earth in May, half a year has passed. Yesterday evening, New York time, the United Nations JS Exchange Program once again released a new set of information to the public media of all member states. This included more information provided by JS Nebula about their social system, ecological environment, culture, economy, military, and other fields related to their social system, ecological environment, culture, economy, military, and other related fields. Although the relevant experts have repeatedly emphasized that we can't completely trust the extraterrestrial life, that we don't understand, and their technological level is obviously higher than ours, but so far, this multicultural civilization on the other side of the universe is very friendly to us, and they have shown considerable sincerity when communicating with us. But to be honest, I personally find it hard to imagine the situation of their nebula. Various mythical creatures and superlife similar to Earthlings live in the same galaxy, and they maintain a relatively peaceful relationship with each other. This should be considered unimaginable to us humans, right? Are you trying to say that we humans are the same species, but we are still at war? Haha, I didn't say that, it's you, beep. After washing up, Fong Bujua returned to the living room, picked up the tablet on the coffee table, and controlled the cursor to click on the hyperlink that appeared on the television screen. What kind of planetary event is the video game media talking about, and they're just shooting their mouths off? As Brother Jew complained, the screen had already switched to a static news webpage. The content on the webpage was the news that the two hosts had mentioned, the new news about JS Nebula announced by the United Nations. Looks like Fate and the 23 tubes are doing quite well. Fong Bujue sat on the sofa and browsed through the news on the television screen. He mumbled to himself, let me see. Lute and Billy have both been elected as governors of their respective planets. The phantom cult led by the bloody corpse god has become the galaxy's law enforcer. Hey, is this to make it easier for people with capital crimes to be executed through the digestive tract? Also, that Duoma has become the biggest religious leader, and the Count of Script and Dianhai King have become his left and right guardians? Even though there were many things to complain about, there was basically nothing that was too surprising. Fong Bujue and the Sisters of Fate had already come up with a long-term plan for the development of the anomalies and the data lifeforms. At least, before the new batch of life forms accumulated to a certain degree, there would not be any major changes in JS Nebula. In a few more years, when the interaction between the nebula and Earth deepened, Earth would naturally be able to develop a warp drive and intergalactic communication hardware. By then, there would be more communication between the nebula, and it would not be impossible to form a tour group. Of course, this did not exclude the possibility that some people on Earth would try to use JS Nebula to cause trouble or even start a war. If that really happened, the corresponding countermeasure, Brother Jew would have already prepared it, and he would be cruel and merciless to solve the root of the problem. About half an hour later, a sleepy Ruo Yu walked out from the bedroom. She looked at her Brother Jew, who was still reading the news on the sofa, and then at the kitchen. She said darkly, "If I don't wake up, you won't eat, will you?" When Brother Jew heard her voice, he shivered. "Actually, I don't know where the cereal is." This was true. Ever since they moved into the new house after marriage, Ruoyu took care of almost all the household chores. Feng Bujue was basically useless except for occasionally cooking and washing dishes. Ah! Ruoyu covered her face and sighed with a hoarse voice. She walked into the bathroom. If I wasn't by your side, would you have starved to death at home? Yes, that's why I've decided to stay within 10 meters of you for the rest of my life. I will not be separated from you for more than half a day, Feng Bujue said in his shameless tone. He did not think it was shameful. If anything, he thought it was an honor. Don't beat around the bush. Obviously, Ruoyu, who was unsealed and married to Brother Ju, had been seriously led astray these days. If you want to say something, say it openly. I don't think you're disgusting. When she said this, she just finished brushing her teeth. She took a sip and began to rinse her mouth. Okay. I'll try my best. Feng Bujue replied with a smile. A few seconds later, he thought of something and continued, Oh right, we're going to your grandpa's house for dinner tonight. Don't forget, Xiao Tan, Xiao Ling, Missen, Bao Qing, and Ouyangku will all be there. He paused and added, Bao Qing and Ouyangku will be there with their wives and children. Let's be careful when we talk. Don't talk about your family's cultivation. Gulalala! Ruoyu spat out the water in her mouth, turned her head, and raised her voice. Am I that kind of person? In our social circle, you're the only one who's full of nonsense, right? By the way, Feng Bujue paused and said, I might need to delay a draft this month. Can you help me talk to Missen and ask her to make an exception? Sure. With a toothbrush in her mouth, Ruoyu agreed without hesitation. Why did you agree so easily? However, Feng Bujue narrowed his eyes and looked in the direction of the bathroom with caution. This is a trap, isn't it? Gulp. Ruoyu rinsed her mouth again. After spitting out the water, she said, I didn't say anything, but since you brought it up. She gave a seductive smile and leaned back. She poked her head out of the door and looked at Brother Ju in the living room. Let's talk about the conditions. Afternoon, City S, a villa under the name of Serene Group. In front of the floor-to-ceiling window, an intellectual beauty with short hair was bathing in the warm sunlight and enjoying a leisurely afternoon tea. On the small, exquisite table, there was a laptop and a cup of steaming black tea. And Yueqin drank the hot tea and browsed the words on the screen. She was already engrossed. At this moment, she was not using an ordinary laptop, but a special piece of hardware that could only be used by the scribes. Since ancient times, these scribes, who were directly protected by God, had been working together to write an epic called Doomsday Apocalypse, also known as the Doomsday Chronicles. The scribes who completed their work well had the opportunity to be promoted to regent. They existed all over the world. Although each scribe recorded different things, when some major events happened, the content they recorded would inevitably overlap. In the 21st century, scribes on Earth no longer needed to write on stone slabs, bamboo slips, or paper. The input hardware of Doomsday Revelation had been upgraded to a laptop, and it also had a function similar to cloud backup. This could be considered as advancing with the times. Suddenly there was a wretched laughter. It was obvious who it was. It seems that you've adapted to your new part-time job very quickly. Is it appropriate for you to barge into a lady's room without saying hello? And Yueqin calmly put down the teacup in her hand, turned her head, and looked at Woody, who suddenly appeared in her room. Sorry. In front of the scribe, Woody was very polite. He apologized without hesitation. His expression and tone were very natural. I'll remember to knock next time. Okay. And Yueqin was now very clear about Woody's background and identity. She did not have to be polite to him. So, what can I do for you? What else can I do for you? I'm just running errands for the Parliament. Woody shrugged. Even if I won the candidate game, my punishment still has to continue. I'm afraid I'll have to do this kind of community service for several years. As he spoke, He took out a cat from behind him. Yes, from behind him. Like a cartoon character taking something out of thin air. "Today, I'm here to give you a pet." Woody paused, took a deep breath, and said again, "And bodyguard." And Yuechin saw the cat in Woody's hand and immediately reacted. "Aren't you?" "Yes, yes." The cat did not wait for the other party to say the name Feng Bujua had obtained and spoke first. "Actually, my name is Kue Moli. I was previously responsible for protecting and monitoring Feng Bujua, but I've recently been transferred to the parliament. I'm no longer part of Woody's organization, so this time I've been sent to protect you. Please take care of me in the future." "Oh, hello." And Yuechin did not know how to comment on this matter. She thought for a moment and said, "By the way, I thought I was directly protected by God. Is that not the case?" "Yes." When Kue Moli replied, she had already jumped from Woody's hand to the ground. But God usually only intervenes when he has no other choice. For example, when you encounter a strong natural disaster or a demon stronger than me, God will intervene. But most of the other times, for example, if you encounter a robber on the street, I'll definitely take care of it. It would be too exaggerated to directly strike the robber to death with heavenly thunder. "I see." And Yuechin nodded and said, "That makes sense." He. Woody said at this time, "Okay, I've delivered the cat. Then I'll take my leave." "Okay, goodbye." And Yuechin had nothing to say to him, so she casually agreed and turned to continue drinking her tea and looking at her records. However, after Woody said his goodbyes, he did not leave even after more than 10 seconds had passed. He stood there, hesitating again, and finally could not help but say again, "He. Lady Recorder, actually, I still have something to ask. You're overstepping your boundaries." And Yuechin also knew that Woody had not left. She knew what he was going to ask before Woody finished his sentence, so she directly said those two words. "He." As expected of the Lady Recorder. "You're beautiful on the outside and smart on the inside." Woody was also a shameless person. According to the situation, he could totally pretend to be a grandson, or even a great-grandson, great-great-grandson, or great-great-great-great-grandson. "Okay, stop flattering me," and Yuechin said. "You can't read my mind, and you don't have the authority to peek at the Book of Revelation, but you're very concerned about Feng Bujua, right?" He. "Yes," Woody replied. Indeed, the universe that had been rewritten by Feng Bujua, fate, and Xi was flawless. Even an existence like Woody could not realize that his memory, cognition, and some of the settings of this universe had been modified and rewritten. However, Woody was still Woody. He still vaguely felt something strange. Therefore, he thought of trying to get information from the recorder. Because no matter what, even if the whole world was rewritten, the Apocalypse revelation could not be changed. If there was really a reality that had been erased or distorted, at least the gods and the scribes, including the regent who used to be a scribe, would still know the truth. "But I don't have the authority to reveal anything to you," and Yuechin said. "If you care so much, you can ask Feng Bujua himself. He. You know that he can now use the Book of Mind and the Pen of Sin to write some simple formulas." Woody continued. "Now, in the whole world, anyone with a little divinity is not willing to show up in front of him, because they are afraid of being observed by him. And Yuechin thought for a while. "Then let me tell you this." She took a sip of tea, and an imperceptible smile flashed across her eyes. "Using chess as an analogy, the game between you and him has ended." Then, Woody pushed his glasses up his nose. "What's the result? Who won? What do you think?" And Yuechin answered with a question. He. "Ha ha ha meow." Before Woody could respond, Kue Moli, who had come to the floor-to-ceiling window, laughed out loud. He. After a moment, Woody also laughed. His laughter was not forced. On the contrary, there was a kind of heartfelt joy in his laughter. Although it's not the first time I've lost, losing to a mortal. He shook his head and let out a long breath. In this world, there's one more interesting guy, yeah. And Yuechin also agreed. In various ways, she said, looking at the computer screen in front of her. He has shown me an interesting and unforgettable story. End of story. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.